what is that person that they're looking at? What are they like objectively?
So meaning that there is no object. You can't be objective.
Anything objectively?
Because they are what they are, but the perception of, according to some human categories, then a person could say, oh, this is not for me, not my type, but then another person, oh, I like this.
It became comical at this point. Like, imagine when in the history of the world has there been governments, like they're governments that were talking about it, like real people, like in political positions, like, oh yeah, we're disclosing information about you. Dude, are there UFOs or not? So something is going on, and it's detectable to a point where like something is weird going on which we can't account for, but nobody still knows what it is, because it means that you could wish for something and reality like adjusts to you. So mental controlling what seems to be physical.
Alex Jones had told us there is a subduction zone under the was it fourth dimension or
Third
what was
dimension,
yeah, like, so there's a space, okay?
All right, welcome back.
Come back.
It's time to
do some more deep fry stuff.
Yeah, to go deeper. We started to go deep pretty good last time. We had to stop because it was
not deep enough.
Yeah, it got deep enough for you to like go away and deal with some other stuff, but there's more to it. We actually stopped at like a very interesting juncture because, you know, going through that whole little diagram that we'll try to finish today, I like the process of just really trying to confirm what anything is, you know, because there are so many words that like in real time, like I notice myself pulling up that meaning. I'm like, hold on, it's fuzzy even for me, like right now. So a lot of these words you either forget or you don't, you know, if you don't use them a lot, you don't really know what they mean. So even that's been great, just kind of dissecting everything bit by bit and confirming that we both understand it in a similar way, at least. I think that was the subject and object are not ultimately separate. That's the one that we were discussing before we stopped. So I'll just share that diagram again. And I don't think we finished much of it, but the biggest contention point was that, again, what do you consider self? That's the part where I stopped. I think I was researching some of that. And if you just ask me for like a definition itself, like these days, it's so fuzzy and nebulous for me that I would say that I don't understand what the word stands for, you know, because you know how the word stands for something. A table, you know what a table is. What is self?
It's too nebulous. It
is. Like, what is it pointing to? Even if you say have a self, like, what is that? What is your sense of self? Like, I don't know what that is. What is a sense of self? What does that mean?
I think it's just
have an idea of what it points to?
Collection of
currently
it's fuzzy,
abstract.
right? It's fuzzy, but we use that word just kind of approximate this kind of I would say is the feeling, is the recognition of the ego, essentially. The idea that this ego is it's a way of like, again, not gonna go through the technical definition, but the idea of the ego is basically it's a gift wrapped. It's like a very nicely presented collections of. It's a way of looking at the world where you feel like, okay, I am this system. This it in itself, I have agency. I can exert my own influence into the world, meaning that you naturally, with the ego, you separate yourself out from nature, right?
Okay, yeah, so that's how I think about it as well, but I was really thinking about how to simplify this into like a very, very direct way, which can be confused with nothing else. And I think I arrived at self is a distinct form of being. It's a distinct in terms of like, it's definitely this, it's unique, and it's a being or a configuration of being. And kind of even the word being here is a little bit fuzzy, but I would essentially, I would conflate the word being with just existence. So if, I exist as a person, there's a self of me that is unique, distinct. You can distinguish me from everything else, right? If you take a specific animal, there's a distinct being there. It's that. It's just a thing in itself, kind of, It's almost like a pronoun, I would say. It's a
Yeah,
pronoun
it's a
for,
categorization. Yeah, like if you see that animal, you see itself
yeah,
in its own entirety, right? It has
yeah,
its
yeah.
own system of
It's like a generalized pointer. That's all
right.
it is. So
It's a
I would keep it at that.
it's yeah, differentiation between what is that animal versus the air around it, right? Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you got to form some kind of boundary. And I think for the human mind, the self is this kind of really simplified version of, I don't know if you call it, it feels like it's something that you accept as true because you feel like, oh, seems right that you are this self where you can see the difference between you and if you interact with anything in the world. Like, okay, I am actively touching this stuff. I'm actually seeing that I'm from this sort of, you can feel yourself, you can touch yourself, you feel like, oh, I'm an entire separate, like you said, being,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That you are distinct from other
That's what I, yeah,
beings
that's
and
what I
other
would say.
things. So
That's
yeah,
where I would stop with this. I mean, even in philosophy, there isn't a single view, This is another funny thing that there's different systems and different traditions describe self as what it is, Like in Buddhism, there's a whole view that there's no self, which is, as valid because again, such a nebulous concept. I I would almost want to agree with that because like I I don't know how to even to think about it. What's the usefulness of it is, You don't really need it in language because I don't know. Maybe that's where you get technical in psychology and and relevant fields. But to me, it's almost like something you make up uh, to dissect things. But some of the main views, let's see. One broad view says the self is the whole person, not some hidden ghost inside the person. Yeah, that's what I would agree with, right? It's just a pointer to the whole being. Whatever this person is, that's the whole thing. That's the self.
because I start thinking back about the, some of the sociology research regarding people from, like, just say a tribal society, and maybe in the past how people kind of consider themselves. And I think it's very fascinating that they don't have this sense of self that we do now, where they see themselves as part of the world in more ways than it's like, oh, I'm this individual. They do think more in terms of like they don't make that separation really, right? Like it's like they're part of everything. They're part of the
Yeah, that's
tribe. They're part of the group. They're part of you. So they
that's what
don't
I'm
have.
saying. It's like they
So
don't even have a need for it.
any reference is really, oh, that's what other people like. They don't even have names. Some of them, right? I read some of the, actually they don't have names. They just have uh reference. Other people would call them something, but that's not their name. That's just what
Yeah,
they
they would
see
have like a
them
function
as.
in society. Yeah, yeah.
But then they don't really make distinctions, such as, oh, I'm this and that. Like that's only also because, you can say this is part of the problem with modern society, where we're so we developed the system in such a way that we so value that individual kind of ality, that individuality, that we're like, oh, you're supposed to be this, like you're dividing yourself more, like you're more and more showing yourself um distinct against all the other individuals, right? There's this kind of race to be like, who can be better, who can be the more successful, the more, within this system that we create. So people naturally feel the pressure, you can even say the evolutionary pressure, to just be more specialized and more distinct and more kind of like not the same. Essentially, like sometimes people even kind of fake differences, or trying to exaggerate something so that they can be known for something. So this kind of performative, people are more doing these kind of what we can even say fake stuff, where it's more like, oh, is you put on a show, you're trying to show off yourself in some ways to get more praise or to get more recognition and this type of thing. It's less about I'm the society, I'm part of the group, I need to
Yeah,
be,
this
you
what
know?
makes me think about kind of the spiritual roots of discussion around this. That's where I think they stem from, because when you're part of of society, the self is just the whole society essentially, and you are a seamless process within it. So there is no even need to separate anything out, because things are fluid and things are whole in there. So the whole concept doesn't even arise. There's no need for it, because everything is working seamlessly, right? If you have a stable system of, here's a village and here are the hunters, and the hunters are bringing food for the whole village,
Yeah.
and the other people in the village are bringing berries for the whole village, and other people in the village are doing cooking or something for the whole village. It's everybody doing things for everybody. There's no need for any kind of separation, because everybody understands naturally also that this is the whole process, and we're all doing this for each other, because that's the only way to even survive and do it. And
Yeah,
that's
because
like harmony.
I think I remember reading the story about the Amish people. I think it's them, where if they see somebody need a house, the whole village, the whole town will come
Right.
together, build that house, no cost. Like we just do it for the guy. Because I know, because they have this system of like, okay, if we do this for you, I know you're gonna do something for us, right? It's that kind of where they see somebody in need, they'll help them. No, no cost. I know they don't even ask them for anything because they know this is how things will work, right? You will help us out next time that you see us needing help. So I think the problem, it really comes into focus because of, again, how modern society are being structured, where we value that kind of possession, right? It's like
Yeah.
your individual property. This is this thing. You gotta denote the exact boundary of what you owe, right? You own this, right? Or what you own. So it's like that kind of mentality just makes you more doing the division. You just start dividing. Okay, this is my land. This is my property. This is my thing. And so subconsciously you naturally start dividing, like, okay, us versus them. If I draw up a boundary of my property, that means there's stuff outside of it that I don't control, or this is what I control, right? You meaning it's like anytime you divide something, you naturally define what's not on the other side of the equation, right? So when you make a distinction, naturally you have made it into you call to question mind of what this is, meaning there's stuff that isn't this, naturally define that as well.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of dynamic where,
I see and I think this plugs in directly in what the guy is describing in his videos and what he's going to talk about the self, that I will go over here in a minute. But what this makes me think about is that, I mean, but that's just today's society too, because everybody does this.
yeah,
Like obviously there are exceptions, there are communities, there are different nationalities where people live differently, and people differently relate to each other and have more traditional societies and stuff. But yeah, what about all these other places that evolved to this different way of living, and in like cities where, yeah, that's how people live, right? Everybody has a different occupation, nobody knows each other, people work like 15 kilometers away, with there's a lot of separation that's happening naturally
because
in modern day in life.
this is how I see it. Means that capitalism worked too well. It worked too well to the point where it affects all nations now, right? I think it doesn't matter. Okay, in recent history, sure, we have this socialist movements, communist movement and stuff like that in the political left, but they by and large have failed to really solve the problem. And so, in a way, you can see the recent world history is that capitalism won over. right? From the start to now, you can see modern society develop along the line of this capitalist thinking, right? All these modern day, it doesn't matter in Asia, North America, whatever, most people have adopted this modern way of life. If you go to these places, you see all this more or less similar, right? Yeah, they do a thing a bit different, but they still build skyscrapers, all this stuff, and their job is about this. The job market is about the same, in the same way as being done. They still have all these capital, how they develop these, economies. So the modern economy is run so well, and it has increased certainly the wealth of a given population. But again, the problem is the distribution. But it's the kind of the systematic, right? This is what happens when you do these things in this way. And it's subconsciously also because you operate in the same manner, because the way you think is also along the line of, okay, I am this gear in the society. I fit into this gear. I need to do this specific job. It's distinction, right? You define yourself by the job, and so you start having these categories, right? So people naturally their mind will start to divide things, like we mentioned, where they fit themselves into specific roles because that's what the society requires, right? But imagine if society developed differently, where I just say if we're still more tribal, then maybe we don't have all of this, but we will still be fine, right? Everybody still live in. But the problem, again, I guess now that I think about it, is the population size, because that kind of
it's the density
you
of
can't maintain
population, size.
higher density, right? But you see, because the drive for profit, the drive for development, it means that people want to you get more people involved, get more people to work, get more people to develop this thing. But you see, I mean, I don't want to get political, but it's becoming a few people get to control the fruit of the labor, right?
Yeah.
When they get more people to do the thing, to participate into this structure, And so that's the drive. And that's what happens. But when people kind of, I don't know, when this is the system, it's kind of already hard to change it because everybody is already so plugged in
Yes.
that you don't even think about how you're behaving because you think that, oh, this is natural. This distinction of the self, of my actualization of what I want to do. And this is why you see all these negative things. I'm not saying that's an exact correlation, but you see all these kind of bad things happening in society, let's just say, of people cheating other people. It's only because, well, these are strangers. I don't care about them. I'm distinct from them. I want myself to benefit more. And so that selfishness comes in because like the more you have this distinction, the more they're willing to do things for themselves at the cost of other people, right? Because to them it's like, wow, I don't know them. You wouldn't do this to your relative, but because you don't know that person, they can F themselves, right? If I can scam them, why not? But see, that kind of negative kind of thought pattern emerges because the environment allowed this to happen. Because it's like, because when you put strangers in the shoe boxes and what have you, but that will basically how it will work out. So how you design and how you kind of live your life is important. But now I think everybody is so affected by this modern way of thinking, it's kind of really hard to adapt a different way.
Like for this to change, I mean, and maybe there are natural dynamics to it, but essentially if you wanted to go the other way, you would have to do the opposite of what most people do and go out from big cities to smaller communities and cities and find a life and place there, right? Which is, it will have its own cost, but that's the tricky part, right? Knowing what's overall better for you. But I know, the world has seen many such people which recognize this. They moved away from big cities. They either literally went to a smaller city, they went to a off the grid, stuff like that. And I think maybe because of this, it's going to be happening more and more because people just recognize it, right? You literally see it for what it is. There's a certain amount of fear that's involved in like uncertainty, right? Like, oh, what if this is the only way? Like, I need to make big money. This is how much everything costs to live in a big city. But that's the strange part, is that to live in a big city where the jobs are, it's the highest cost of living. You need the higher paying jobs, But all of this comes with so many sacrifices and detrimental effects that is it worth it, at the end? It's difficult to both see and consider all such things. But there is something to the fact that many people have already seen through that, and they just decided, yeah, it's not worth it. Maybe it's, different things fit better different people, but I bet there's still it takes toll on everybody, because we're all people, we're all humans, and we have the same framework underneath, so to say, right? Same firmware, more or less. So biology is the same. But yeah, we talked about this before as well, so this is nothing new. It's just definitely food for thought, and the way it plugs into this idea of self. So the author of those videos, I think the way he meant the word self, just so we can tie it into the main points that we're discussing, he treats the self as part of the subject-object split that mind creates and then mistakes for absolute reality. So when he says self, he usually does not just mean your biography or personality. He means the felt center of ownership and separateness, the sense that I am in here looking out at a world over there. So that's a slightly more metaphysical definition of this, but I guess it refers to your, this sense that you are in here, somewhere in here in the body, right? Looking out at the world out there, but that's what that's what it feels like, right? That's what it seems like.
Which is why it's so easy for people to think that way, because it feels true. It feels like, yeah, I am separate from all this because I can individually do things out of my own mind, or my own volition, and I can change stuff. I can affect the world, meaning that, oh, I am separate from. That's how the thinking will go, right? So yeah, I think it's like that's the illusion of it, right?
Sometimes I even think that this sense of self is maybe in some people it's naturally less defined or even more absent. I think maybe the sense of self is literally some kind of looped self-chasing pattern of thinking. It's this obsession with your own distinctness. And I think this is where this discourse is going, essentially. It's the fact that even this sense of self is just a mental construction. It's just a way of thinking, of seeing, a perspective, which I'm not opposed to that. I think that's definitely a possibility, but it's just so difficult for me to envision anything else. What would that be like,
exactly,
right?
How else would you feel about the world? Sure, conceptually you can understand, okay, I am part of everything. I am part of because people cannot get to understand, okay, I can agree to that, right? Conceptually. But in terms of how you actually feel, it's like, well, I feel pretty distinct, right? You will feel that way. So when you say, how can I feel more like not so much of myself, like I say, if can I feel the universe? Can I be part of you are part of the universe, but you can't feel it that way because this is how the perception, how your whole way of being is. So you can only see it from this point of view. It's almost like you can mentally try to see it from a bird's eye view. You can kind of conceptually see it, but you don't feel it that way because I am in this locale. I'm in this physical location, seeing what I'm seeing, experiencing what I'm experiencing. So for me to say, I can try to imagine what it would be like to be a bird, flying over, doing the bird thing. But like, I can only imagine because I'm not that bird. I am separate from that bird by distance, by where we are, by our biology and this and that. So it's hard for me to...
The closest I can think about this is on the examples of those other peoples and societies, right, which have a different way of life. But because that's just how things shaped up to be. So maybe it naturally, when you have a whole culture, a way of being, everybody teaches you this is how we do things, you don't develop that such a separated sense of self, right? You naturally are part of the whole process from the very age you develop that way. But these days, it seems like, that's just norm, is that you have a much more distinct formed sense of self. But what does that mean on the level of nature of reality in terms of what is it? Is it what is being shaped, right? Is that some kind of, is that just a sociological phenomenon where you're just not plugged into a community and that's what it is? Because that's my only realistic approach to this. Yeah, if I was being raised and was plugged in into my own community, and never left it, I would be a completely different type of being where these ideas, maybe these thoughts and discussions and questions would not even come up because I'd be completely content and happy with being plugged into existing community with beings. But I'm a freaking immigrant, maybe that's part of the problem, is that I am completely detached from my original environment where I feel that distinctness. I feel that separateness also because of that.
There is that.
Maybe there's some of that involved, yeah.
But I feel like fundamentally, though, this is perhaps part of the natural order of things, of evolution. Because think about it, if you, an individual, try to survive in the wild, you do have to make distinctions of your own sense of being versus where the world is situated. So if you try to avoid danger, you have to recognize what is danger, right? That tiger, which is separate from me, but is trying to eat me. So you recognize okay, I'm different from that, but you see you basically, as a creature, as an organism, you start to detect, okay, what's danger to me and what's not. So you start to distinct yourself outside of the environment, meaning that for you to survive, yeah, you have to have a sense of like, okay, I am this thing. I need to protect myself against nature. Therefore, you kind of have to have some kind of recognition, basically the ego of accepting, okay, I'm an individual. I am this thing. I must protect myself. So I would think, this is naturally arising. But the problem with modern society is that we're jacked up to the tits with that. Like we're basically propagandize ourselves in saying the individual, the self, is the paramount. You need to.
I think I have a better idea about this now, yeah, because it's kind of like a spectrum. And what this guy is talking about is that on the far extremes of that spectrum, you have this completely separate self that is like I'm
solipsism,
here,
right?
And the world is there. And on the other, I'm not sure if that's solipsism, but this oneness with the world.
Oh, okay.
That would be on the other spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Where there is no separation at all. Practically what that is, we don't know yet, but let's keep going, I think, because we're getting closer to this. This is why I wanted to clarify about the nature of what self is, can that even be referring to? So the points that we're discussing here, the self is not independent from reality. So this is what he's talking about, right? Subject and object are not ultimately separate. That's the claim. And it's supported by the fact that self is not independent from reality. Independent from reality, I think I'd agree to that, because it's like, what would that mean for you to be independent of reality? You're not, right? You're constantly affected by it. You're not immune, right? If there are other people that are, deal with you, you have to, you can't be like completely apart from that. So yeah, you're not independent from reality. That's fine. That's self, so it's, at the very least, it's intertwined with it. Then reality is not fully external to mind. This one,
it's not outside of the mind. It's not
fully external to mind. So what does that mean? It's kind of like it refers to the fact that, this, how we explained this before, we talked about this before, that you constantly are constructing the reality, in some way you're constantly interpreting reality. So there is certain enmeshing happening between the reality you perceive, that perception is in your mind. So the reality that you think is out there, it's not external to the mind just because of that, just because there's an interpretation and reconstruction happening at all times. But that's where I would cap it. It's not fully external to the mind. That's fine. And mind and world arise together with an experience. Mind and world. This one is trippy. Mind and world arise together with an experience.
Because you see, we are constructing our own reality because of what you see and what you experience is constructed because the brain interprets what you see and makes the picture. right? So in that mechanism, you are naturally, by definition, constructing everything you know about reality by constructing it. So even though this is what you see, this is what you experience in life, and you are part of that reality, but you are constantly interpreting that.
Hmm.
It's a reconstruction. So meaning that you can, even if you see 100% of what you're supposed to see, it's still reconstructed. You are still
Yeah.
separate from the actual reality, and you're constructing it. So
But what does it mean that the mind and the world arise together within experience? The world, I understand, right? The world is essentially reality that you perceive. But what is mind?
does he refer to the construction of all this? The mental image, the
Mind,
mental.
yeah, right. The mental image and the actual reality. I think, yeah, that's the claim. That's what it points to. So both the mental image of reality and the reality arise together at the same time, and they're not indistinguishable. I think that's what it means. I mean, from the standpoint of your experience, yeah, you don't have a way to split or measure it in any other way, right? As
Yeah,
far as you are concerned,
this is
this
how you feel to
this
be,
this
you know.
interpretation of reality is reality. Yes, I do agree with that. I've come to that conclusion myself before.
Yeah.
That, yeah, for all intents and purposes, whatever you want to call this, illusion or whatever, it is still your reality, the only one.
Yeah. And it's just that there are minor discrepancies, like when you kind of talk to other people and just like, hey, is this reality? They will tell you a slightly different kind of version, right? So
Yeah.
that's why in the real world you have many of these kind of differences of opinion. There's this minor interpretation that are different from other people against yours. And that only to show, I know this kind of really it irritates a lot of people because they think they want to think like my reality is the reality, right? But the actual truth of it is that each and every person is interpreting that reality. And what comes back is a little bit different. I mean, we can, for the most part, we can agree on, a lot of things because that's is more or less what we see, what we feel, what we, but that subtle differences are really gonna meddle with the result, right? I just say if this is a scientific research, it's almost impossible to conduct because there's just so many variations, tiny variations that
Yeah, and I've
makes the
thought
difference.
about this as well. Like I've even literally seen, I've watched non-dual teachers essentially explaining this concept to this extreme that, yeah, everybody lives in their own reality, and like to the point of like you're imagining all these other people the way you imagine them,
Yeah,
and the other person sees completely different stuff.
exactly.
And it's a fun claim because, like, first of all, there's no way to verify it, but there is enough of a kind of proof in real life to see where, yeah, there's definitely some variations in this interpretation, which means that person sees that as their reality. But you see it completely differently. What doesn't make sense to me is that then does that mean that there is no objective reality? Like there is still some kind of overlap though, right? Some kind of overlap.
Well, I guess it's really depending on the actual, because I think it's tricky when we talk about people though.
Yeah.
I think, which make it interesting because what's the difference then? Why is it people would be different? Because if you talk about some natural phenomena like lightning, for example, we can describe exactly what's happening with that process, and it seems like everybody can see it for the same of what it actually looks like, what is the actual process of
Hmm.
that phenomenon. But when you talk to a human, like for example, what we talked before, imagine if a guy sees a woman on the street, and for some reason he has a delusion thinking, oh, she likes me. Why would you have that? In reality, unless he found out, then he wouldn't know. But that's a delusion. You're thinking that that's the case, but for what reason? So when it comes to
Or
human beings, it's like, okay, well, how can we agree the phenomenon is happening, but then each of us have different
yeah,
viewpoint.
there's still a different viewpoint and interpretation and valuation of it. So because, especially a good example, the subjectivity of beauty, right? The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, two different people look at the same person. One of them thinks they're
Different,
beautiful,
yeah.
another one doesn't. What is that? That's
So
interesting,
what
right?
does that say about
So that
reality?
also
Does
that
that mean that person is not
yeah,
beautiful? Because this guy says so, that
yes.
that the other person doesn't say it, then what's the
But then also an interesting question, and what is that person that they're looking at? What are they like objectively?
So meaning that there is
Are
no
they,
object. You
yeah,
can't
are
be
they anything
objective
objectively?
because they are what they are, but the
Yeah,
perception of
is always
according to some
subjective.
human categories, then
Yeah.
a person could say, "Oh, this is not for me, not my type." But then another person, "Oh, I like this."
And I
That's just
think,
opinion, right? So
yeah.
the meaning that when it comes to human, it's
But
the
the question is it
interpretation
like that with all? I think that might be like that with all things,
with
because
all things, right?
even that you mentioned like natural phenomena, even like if you describe lightning, to some people they would say like,
Yeah,
oh, it's bright and loud, and to other people they would describe it differently,
right. So,
because all we
y-
can do is describe
so
it in
yeah, so
some
you
words.
do have that common
I don't know,
phenomenon.
precise.
But then, right, because it has to be observed by people,
Yeah,
they will
it's
interpret.
always,
So naturally, it will be, by definition, a construction
yeah.
of an actual thing.
So
Meaning
that
you.
is interesting
So
then.
meaning there is no objective reality.
Yeah,
Every reality is subjective,
yeah, yeah.
or at least you can say the phenomenon, whatever exists. But when it comes to our comprehension, is
In our
always
reality,
subjective. It's always
yeah,
subjective. So meaning that you can say yes, there is an object reality, but how we experience it is always subjective. That you can't. That supposedly quote unquote objective is no way to be gained. You cannot get an objective view of the
yes, there,
world because
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
are naturally interpreting.
Yeah. Okay, then this point ties into the fact that subject and object are not ultimately separate. Would that be what that means? Would the absence of this objective reality mean that this just perceived subjective reality that is arising in front of you at real time
Because you can say this. You can say,
is
okay,
is
subject,
yeah, what does
and
it mean? Does that mean that you're one with reality?
I mean, you could say, okay, the subject and object exist together, yes, but
Not ultimately separate. See, this is also like kind of a vague, confusing part.
this
Yeah,
to
it's not
me is
ultimately separate.
what this to me is basically the non-dualism. The idea that everything is one is just okay, even if you experience of that reality is subjective, but you are still part of that whole thing, right? That's how I interpret it. Like so that which is what it's saying, the subject and object are not separate. Even though it might feel separate or even though it might be you are interpreting things, but
Okay, yeah, it's just the nature of that not separateness. I don't. It's not clear to me what is the kind of point of that, and why is that important, and what is there to keep in mind from that, right? Because if you just walk about in the world keeping that in mind, what does that do? I don't know. Maybe
because
try
I
it.
don't think you can live on the day-to-day basis, keep that in mind and be like that. I think that naturally you
Yeah,
will
because
have this.
naturally, like just the world and situations pull you in. Like it would require some. I don't know. You would have to be a really skilled meditator or something for your awareness to constantly hold that in mind. Because it's like another meta thought you would have to be aware of in addition to everything else that you're doing. But in my experience, that hasn't been possible. It's very difficult. Like I can't think of much when I'm engaging with the world. It's something that you would have to meditate on separately. So I think that's fine. Yeah, the subject and object are not ultimately separate. There is some kind of relationship between what you're perceiving and you. It's just for now, it's not clear to me what that relationship is. Let's leave it at that for now. Material realism becomes appearance. So the ordinary world seems solid, separate, and external. It seems so, yes. But this separateness is a construction of mind. Well, that's a big leap. This constructed appearance is what he calls illusion or Maya.
But again,
What would that mean that it's a construction of mind if that's what it appears as?
thing is you're gonna have to accept the precept of non-dualism first for you to see it in this way, right? That's basically what comes to my mind when this is when we talk about this. It's just like okay, but you see the thing he's leading from acceptance of this. I just call them non-dualism, right? For you to interpret all the facts in such a way. this feeds into that, because you kind of have to, like, basically you have to accept a certain ism before you can, how else are you going to list out everything and try to interpret it in such a way, right? But this is what is essentially what non-dual is saying, right? It's
No,
all
but this is why
constructed.
we're kind of getting it brick by brick. So I don't want to be accepting anything, like, right, we'll go to that final conclusion next, but just on these little bricks on their own, that's what I'm evaluating on their own. And with these things, I do have a problem with that, because
Yeah, because
the ordinary world seems solid, separate, and external. It seems so, yes, but here, this is a problem. This separateness is a construction of mind. This is a giant leap,
yeah,
because
you can't prove it, right?
there is no proof for this.
Yeah. So which is why I said,
For this to be true, it would need to be demonstrated how the mind can construct something based on your conscious volition, for example. Because if that cannot be demonstrated, then we don't know how it's happening. The matter is there, the table doesn't change into something else all of a sudden. There are no such phenomena. There is specific laws according to which everybody sees and interacts with the world. If that is not the case, it would simply have to be demonstrated. If it can't be demonstrated, that's a problem, and nobody's seen any of that.
well, see, if I go by my previous example about how we construct like the subjective view is kind of an interpretation. So it's more or like by logic, you can say that this is being constructed by the mind of a version of the real of objective reality.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this is a mechanism of you, the process being that your entire being, your biological whatever process, able to interpret the data and form a picture, form a sound or whatever of the physical world, that is a construction because it's
Okay.
an interpretation. So through that logical point, I can see why such a statement is being stated, because you're just saying
I see. Okay.
naturally you interpret things, meaning you
Yeah.
construct that reality, meaning
Yes.
that it's separate from the actual real whatever physical quality it is. You still make a interpretation, a visual, because this is why
Okay. Yeah. This is really helpful. This is really good explanation. It's a logical step. Yeah. That's the connection, and this is how it's explained. So this gradually constructs this picture that does support this ultimate claim.
this is why I'm saying he had the claim first and then try to fit it into because I mean, how else are
Yeah,
you gonna do it though? I mean, how else are you gonna?
I guess so. But it's kind of like a theory and the proof, right? Except here, this is still just on the level of philosophy, right? This is why we can use words and logic and just conclusions where it leads to. But what I'm still curious about is that how it changes anything about anything. So this
It's more like
materialism,
it's the same way as how I think about non-dualism. It's like, okay,
is
but
just a lens.
yeah, but like I still have bitch ass bills,
Yeah,
like
we've been over
it
that.
doesn't change anything other than how you think about the world.
But let's see, because maybe it does if you. This is the part. See, like we touched upon the fact that you can't fake belief. My hunch is that belief does change that. And similarly, if you do legitimately believe in Jesus, in the Bible, you will change the way you live your life. And that in turn will change how people respond to you. So there's technically a direct relationship there between belief and then you and your reality that you experience,
Which
right?
is why this, I just call this illusion, Maya, whatever you call it, it's so powerful, right?
Yeah.
Like you can get so wound up in it that you think that, yeah, that's the reality you're dealing with. All the stuff that you see, how you feel, what you believe is, that entire thing will be your world. You're living in it, and you think that that's the real world, right?
Okay, then I mean, I think then you understand this guy much better than me. This is why this process is it's more for me just to understand what is even being talked about. But I understand it now. So this makes sense. It's kind of like brings into attention the fact, yes, that your relationship with reality and your interpretation of it it is a different endeavor. It's not as solid as it seems. It's not as external as it seems. So I'm okay with accepting that now. And this material realism becomes appearance. It's just another lens, another way of seeing, another way of interpreting reality, which might not be the only real and objective and solid way of seeing reality.
I
So this
mean,
kind of already shakes the foundation of what you think reality is, right?
yeah, because as we know, Alex Jones has told us there is a subduction zone under the was it fourth dimension or
Third
what it was?
dimension, at least.
So there is a space, okay? So I mean, he went there, he proves it. It's not questionable that there's more to it. There's more to life than what you see, okay? I mean,
Man, next up, I think we might need
dissect
to
Alex
dissect
Jonesism.
the Tao of Alex Jones, man, because the rabbit hole will keep getting deeper with that one. Actually, yeah, I think we should do that because it would be so funny uh, for for a change of pace. Uh, but this is interesting. So let's see what the final conclusion is. Reality is ordinarily perceived as dreamlike. Dreamlike meaning what? Dream as like more malleable, and the fact that it's more influenced by some kind of mental
Yeah.
capacity. Because if I think about dreaming, where I'm going with this is that I've had some experiences with lucid dreaming before. When I was 18, 17, I got really into it because I got really curious about dreams, and I got really passionate about trying to I wanted to prove, because I started imagine, right, you are a young person, you're growing up in the world, and you are essentially just learning about, okay, where am I, what's going on, and you start encountering people and books and stuff talking about oh yeah, you can do lucid dreaming and there's a whole reality out there. I don't know. So I
Hmm.
started taking it I wanted to just investigate, right? Well, let's see if it's real. I really got into it, and I started practicing these techniques, and they were very difficult for me because you have to go to sleep, and instead of falling asleep, you have to do mental exercise and then envision stuff, and feel yourself, have a mental sensation of your body coming out of your body. So you have to imagine stuff, at the very least use a lot of your imagination, which requires concentration. I was trying it for a long time, but eventually I did have a couple experiences which were very distinct experiences. One of them was what felt like I did pop out of my body, which I felt oh, I'm like some kind of something, but I'm definitely not in my body. I
Hmm.
felt myself being in some kind of darkness, and I felt conscious, oh, I'm alive. I'm here, I'm present. And I was able to think about some kind of person, and I darted over and I was in their flat or something. And then that was just an online acquaintance I had. I described to them that I saw a guitar hanging on their wall in the kitchen, and they confirmed that that's the case. And I've never been to their, I don't know them, right? And that was wild. I was like, that's a weird coincidence. Of all the things, a guitar hanging in the kitchen, have you ever seen that anywhere? That doesn't happen. People don't do that. So that was interesting. And then a couple more times where I was trying different things too. At one point I got a book about Tibetan yoga of sleep, and I just started doing some exercises from there where you have to envision certain characters in Sanskrit or something, and certain beings, and you have to do certain mental also imaginations with them. And they were difficult because you had to wake up in the middle of the night, and you had to do this stuff, so it disrupts your sleep, because that's how you do it. And again, a couple times it did work where I had a lucid dream where, again, you're sleeping, right? And then all of a sudden you become aware, and you're in a dream scenario, which obviously you're in a dream because it's just suddenly you're in some situation, but you're conscious. You feel aware, and that was wild. Yeah, there was one dream where my friend from high school, he was dragging me all over the floor and laughing for some reason. And I became aware. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, looking at me laughing. I'm like, what the hell is that? What is going on? But because I only had a few successes in that, those experiences were very short. And people saying like, yeah, if you train this skill, essentially you'd be able to have however long experiences in the dream world. And from what I understand, that's where if you do develop those skills, essentially the dream is malleable, as in you can wish for stuff and it will be that way. That's like the ultimate claim. I really wish that I was able to develop those skills further, but like I spent probably like 8 or so months concentrated on that stuff, and it was too energy resourceful. Like it was too difficult because you have to disrupt your sleep all the time. You're not resting properly. It didn't feel like a natural ability to me, so I was like, I stopped it. But I heard, like, I read so many accounts where people like do it, like, oh yeah, I do all this stuff in my lucid dreams. You can do whatever you want. Must be nice. But what this is claiming is that reality is more like it. And this is, to me, is the ultimate crazy claim, because it means that you could wish for something and reality like adjusts to you. So mental controlling what seems to be physical. That's the craziest stuff. Like that would need to be, how can that be demonstrated, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can see how, look, given what we know of even just the general pop science, uh, things of talking about quantum mechanic, right? Even with our limited knowledge about it. But essentially, science are saying this stuff is weird, right? And I think a lot of people can see that as sort of not proof or not, but it's an indication that, okay, maybe reality is as strange as we think it is, because apparently there are some of these things are like that, where, things like the typical an act of observing it changes it, and, who knows what the actual fundamental reality of these quantum mechanics processes are like. What does that mean, right? Maybe because I can think about, okay, if this person's saying, okay, the actual reality is kind of like dreamlike. I mean, I can even in the fictional kind of way, I can see it. Like, okay, that can be a construction of the world where it's sort of just because quantum mechanics exists, kind of give you the sense. Okay, well, maybe then yeah, these things can change according to some aspect of the fundamental fabric of space or whatever, right? But then it's fictional. To me, it feels like, okay, I can come up with this. I can even try to come up with an explanation that really explains it, but how would you prove it, right? How would you say, okay, well, this is the
Oh yeah,
actual
that's what
reality?
I'm saying. Like it would need to be proven where your willpower alone would be enough to, it's conjuring. Essentially, it would need to be conjuring type of stuff, because in
Right.
dreams you can do stuff like that, right? You can conjure a situation. You like, I wish I was like in a palace, and then you would be in a palace. It's imagination type of stuff, right? Like right now, you can imagine yourself being a palace in your imagination. That is dreamlike. Your imagination is dreamlike. But what is the relationship of your imagination to this physical reality? I think that's the question that would need to be really explored.
So I think,
Because if the reality is dreamlike, there would need to be a relationship between your imagination and reality, which is traceable.
but right now, I mean, things like that, people have thought about stuff like that, right? The fact that reality, I mean, okay, not the fact, they're saying that reality is malleable. And then these not, I mean, there are many people who have these sort of claims or these some sort of way of thinking. And again, right, we come to the problem of the hard proof. There is no way to prove it, and therefore we don't really, but doesn't stop people from thinking that, oh, that might be the case,
Essentially,
but
that would be the magic kind of
it
stuff.
is magic, right?
It's
But
magic. It would
it's,
have to be magic.
yeah, it's like exactly
Because
magic where,
in a dream, you use your imagination, or you use your imagination right now, and like, I have a fireball in my hand, and I can see it. But here it doesn't happen.
yeah,
So this is different from the imagination in the dream. I mean, here, this is where it falls apart for me.
yeah.
It's, it's at that level. And also, still, the question is, what is the practical difference with this seeing? If you do accept it that reality is dreamlike, why? What is to do with that information? What
So
does
does
it do
that
for you?
mean, is there any leanings to manifestation then? The idea that, okay, if it's dreamlike, then I can
Yeah, that's where it
imagine
would have to be
myself.
connected to. So he hasn't done, I think he's going to do part 4 of these videos eventually. So we'll be curious to see what he says there. But so far, it stopped it there. And let me just see what else was on the diagram. And after that, I wanted to kind of go over a couple of interactions that I had in the comments to the YouTube video, because they were kind of comical from both standpoint that I don't understand. I'm approaching from a different paradigm. But yeah, let's see that. So he concludes that due to this, you can say that reality is a dream. I don't know. It doesn't follow to me. There's definitely a lot of points are correct and make sense to me. But I would grant it's this. It's dreamlike in the sense of being constructed appearance within consciousness, but that appearance seems to be much more solid and independent from you and your imagination that it is in dreams. So to me, it's unlike the dreams because of that. Hidden assumptions needed for conclusion. This is just something that AI helped with identifying. Experience is primary over conceptual models. Subject-object separation is constructed rather than ultimate. Consciousness is fundamental, not derivative. These are all abstract. See, there's a lot of stuff that can happen in abstract theoretical stuff. This kind of also reminds me of the world of math, for example, because of math is like that. It's kind of mental, right?
What it reminds me again is back to the quantum mechanic idea of, like Schrodinger's cat. The idea that you don't know the result before it becomes
it's a potentiality,
right? Yeah, potentiality. So the idea that these dreamlike things are the potentiality. So meaning that I'm thinking that he's saying that you basically can manifest your things into reality by making them into a concrete thing, meaning that they're malleable, they're controllable.
Okay, then
right?
Tell us how, and we could test that that method. But that's about it, right? That's where it would have to stop. Biggest logical leap. He moves from all experiences mind mediated to mind and reality are not separate. Yeah, see, that's a logical leap to reality is a dream. These are logical leaps. That actually made me think about something the other day, that what makes these logical connections, any logical connections, true?
Again, logic is not foolproof. I mean, it's like
logic is
you
some
would
kind
have
of
to
it's a system of sense making, as we discussed before in the beginning, right? But what are the rules of making sense there? Like, see, because to him this makes sense. Somehow these logical leaps
but then
are
he
acceptable
made
to
those
him.
rules, right, in his own mind to say, oh, this is how it makes sense to that particular person when they think, oh, then you see, you have some presuppositions that you accept.
That's what I'm saying. It almost seems like for any logical step or connection, a certain belief has to be there.
Because
so even logic is belief.
Yeah, because see,
right?
The scientific method, sometimes the process is that you need to disprove the theories. You need to say that this is probably wrong. And a lot of the time they are. And a lot of times they try to prove that they use everything in their power to prove that it is wrong. In that way to say, okay, we can finalize and find out what the reality is, right? So scientists in their process of getting their result, they need to test for everything and to dispel sometimes logic, because sometimes the result is a conflict with what people think logically will happen. This is how discovery happens, right? Where you find out, oh, this is counterintuitive. Why is it that way? Because that means that by logic, you think of a certain way, it should happen a certain way, but the test result does not reflect that. And you test it many times and you found that it's still the same result, meaning that your conception of how it worked before is flawed. And therefore, you must readjust your worldview. This is how the paradigm shift happens, right? Where it's like the old way of thinking is being proven wrong, right? And you're finding new methods to kind of test the result until you find something that kind of really shows what the reality seems to be. And this happens more often in astronomy, cosmology, because these things are not very easily provable, right? Because you need lots of data. There's a lot of interference and things that happens out there because it's in space, right? But there are things that people find out there that really contradict what they thought was the process that was, because we have limited amount of information to kind of ascertain all that. As more sense making in the technical gears are getting better and better with better telescope and whatever, we're start seeing more evidence of that suggests something that's different than what we interpret. So all to say that, yeah, I mean, anybody can come up with a theory, right, of how things supposed to work or how, but just as they're saying, you can construct all of that. And that will be your world. That will be your reality if you believe it hard enough. But the question is, how do you test it? Because without being able to demonstratively show that this is the case, it's all theories. So no matter how you say it, how you gonna convince people or how well-rounded it is, it will not be, it's still a theory. You can't be taken like, oh, this is reality. I mean, sure, if you believe that, that's your own personal belief. Just the same way that, Einstein was trying to find this equation that basically unifies all of physics, and he couldn't do it. And he has enough of, what do you call that? I don't want to say backbone, but he basically has enough of integrity that he didn't just continue with this because he knows he can't find it. He didn't just like claim, "Oh, I found this thing. It should work," because he sees that this doesn't work, and therefore he just gave up. So okay, I can't find it. I tried, and I couldn't find this ultimate thing that combined general relativity, classical physics with the quantum mechanics. I can't do it. I couldn't find it. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Even though he really wants to find it, he think that they gotta be perfect. There gotta be something that
He's
fits
missing
both
something.
model, but something is missing and he couldn't see it and he couldn't find it. And until now, people still don't find it. Like they can't comprehend why quantum mechanics does not agree with the bigger physical thing that we do see and is being proven is the case, right? The classical physics there are experiments being done again and again to prove that it is for real. But so is the experiments that test quantum mechanics seem to also prove they are for real, but they just don't agree with each other. So meaning there is no overarching theory that can explain all of the phenomena. It doesn't work. So this has a specific theories that describe it, and that has a specific theory that describe it, but they don't, almost like two different languages, they don't talk with each other. So what's missing? If this whole world is the reality, then they gotta work. Everything should work together. There shouldn't be a gap of understanding. It can't be this is true for this and that's true for that. Why?
Yeah, why would
If
that
it's
be the
supposed to
case?
be, if it's the one reality, right? Whereas everything is supposed to work together. So it doesn't matter how deep you go down the
Well,
size, you should all agree, but it doesn't.
yeah, that may be there might be some kind of mystical, mechanism at play, right? Because what you're describing and what Einstein expected is that the world is a machine where there's a
Right.
gear
It's
that
supposed to
connects to
work.
another gear that connects to another gear.
You can
There's
account
no
for all of
gaps.
it, right? You can
Yeah,
account for all the
there is
aspects.
some kind of visible, detectable interaction among all parts, all detectable parts in the world, all the forces, all the particles. They all have some specific laws around which they interact, and it's all connected and so right. There's no gaps. But it seems like at different scales and different conditions, there's random stuff happening, and that's unaccounted for. Why would that be the case?
Which is the same in the same way when we think about stuff we're thinking today here. It's also that where, yeah, okay, you can have all kinds of theories that explain kind of more or less perfectly what you experience, but that still is just a way of describing, right? It's like this must make sense logically, but does that mean it is for real? Like this is how exactly it works, right? I mean, this is why we still haven't found out that what that is, because you can have scientists who does experiments specifically for phenomena in the world and all that, but they still can't connect this thing with some of our experiences or what we experience in life and how, like, I mean, how do you explain some of these supposedly paranormal activities or whatever, right? I mean, don't know. I mean, you can have theories about scientifically what to explain it. I'm sure that makes sense. You can kind of read that and go, okay, that does make sense logically for that to be the case, being mistaken as a paranormal whatever. Sure. But then, we're not convincing everybody, right? There are always people who's like, oh, we believe in paranormal activities. There's a whole different thing going on that we don't see and stuff. I mean, sure. I have heard people telling me ghost stories. Like they're for real. Like they think it's for real. Like they say that, oh, I experienced it for real, man. But like to me, how do I distinguish that from fiction? I don't know, right? Maybe something happened. I don't know, right? Maybe it's for real, but you
So
can't explain
one
it.
thing that I know that mind plays tricks on you and things can seem real. Like there is mental phenomena, right? There is such a thing that something happens in your mind and that can seem real. But the question is, again, what is there distinction between seeming real and being real? And that's where the whole mystery, I think, is exists because yeah, there seems to be a lot of people, there which just report it because why would there be such an interpretation like, oh, I saw a ghost? How can there be so prominent where like it's not like, you saw a hat in the dark hallway and it seemed like something? Because that would be a very different thing if like a ghostly image of a person with a face like appeared in front of you, right? Like a magic style. I'm sure people experience something like that, and that's what they called it. But like, what is that? Why it happens and why we can't capture it, measure it, prove it, etc. That's the real question. It's almost like maybe it's just that's the baked in part of how we perceive things. Just sometimes we like hallucinate for some reason like that.
There are hallucinations
Whereas
that
like we
happens, yeah.
see it, but it's just somehow fabricated, like generated by our mind. I think that's the closest that I can think of that what's happening objectively. But that's still interesting in terms of, well, what else is mind fabricating and generating, right? And making you hallucinate. That's the real question.
But I mean, that's the part where I understand that the whole scientific method is not going to be able to explain everything. And this is why I could say that I am, maybe this is not the right word, but approximating agnostic about anything like in this realm of,
Yeah, you
say,
just don't know. You don't know what it is.
believe how whether there's deity or no, all that stuff, right? Between that and also like, what about these phenomena that people say that happens? Is it for real? Is it not? Or are they just are they tripping or whatever? I don't know, right? I can't definitively say that's complete nonsense. That there gotta be a way to prove it that they're wrong, whatever. I'm not that. I'm not from that camp where I'm just so militant about like, oh, the science is the truth and there's got to be a way to prove every single thing that's been claimed and there is no ghost, there is no whatever. I just I know enough that I don't know. I know enough to say that I don't know. Just like, oh, if you ask somebody, does alien exist? Well, I don't know. Who's gonna know, right? Maybe they do, maybe they don't, right? Nobody have proof yet. So how are you gonna say?
Which is like, by the way, what is going on with all the alien stuff? Are there proof or what? Why is everybody talking about this stuff these days? I see so many people like it's out in the mainstream like right now. Is I don't follow it, so I'm just
It's I
it's
think
it's
it's
annoying
just,
as shit. Like, are
yeah,
there aliens or not?
but
Why is
bro,
everybody talking about it? Is there proof or not?
I
No,
don't know,
right?
man. Doesn't seems like. I mean,
No.
if it
So
is, then we should already kind of,
it's became comical at this point. Like, imagine when in the history of the world has there been governments like they're governments that are talking about it, like real people, like in political positions, like, oh yeah, we're disclosing information about you, dude. Are there UFOs or not? How difficult is it to fucking say what's
just
going
say.
on? Is
But
it
but
is it there or is it not there?
but
What do you have?
but
You have
dude,
pixelated video? Go fuck yourself, okay?
but dude, I want to believe, right? I mean, I want to believe. That's the whole.
But at this point, it's ridiculous. Like, what is the level the level of epistemology? It's got to be something solid. Why are they creating this mystery of like maybe it is, maybe it isn't? Why? It's ridiculous. If it's real, you know how easy it is to show a freaking. We have high definition cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
Not a single. Everything is pixelated dot on a freaking millimeter level. What do you want? It's like It's so strange, dude.
But yeah, it's the same question, right? Where all of these people are still persisting in all this because it is unexplainable. This is why
So
people just
something is
continue.
going on, and it's detectable to a point where like something is weird going on, which we can't account for, but nobody still knows what it is. It's kind of like another point, another like almost the same mystery level as a spiritual level, right? It's like, oh, there's something inexplainable about reality, and we can't even begin to trace it. Like, why? It's almost like there's a hint, and that's all you get. There's like a hint that there's something, some kind of something, but no more than that. I wonder why. Like, what is the effect of this? Because it keeps people guessing, it keeps people on their toes, it keeps people also frightened and uncertain about the unknown, right? So I wonder if all of this is done on purpose.
Well, the other question to ask is, let's just say if we know everything, I say everything is explained. Maybe that's not the way humanity will operate because they can't. Can they really be content with full certainty? Like everything is explained, everything it's
No,
already
that's just how we naturally operate, right? Whenever something appears in our in anything, we need to know what that is, right? It goes back to that primal drive we talk about. Like, what is it? Is it dangerous? Can I eat it? We do need to know what it is. We can't be like, oh yeah, whatever. Especially at this point, right, where we literally developed this technology to manipulate physical reality, to look as far as we can downstairs into the micro, upstairs into the cosmos, as far as we can. Like, what's going on? What is this? Look at that. We keep doing that. That's our whole thing.
just as.
We're explorers.
But yes, but just as the Matrix has shown us, the humans are very picky eaters. You know, like when you're presented with a utopia where everything is working out, man, like no, this
We
is
can't
something is
not
wrong with
question
this
it.
picture. Something is wrong with this picture, right? So it's almost like I think it feels like that they were, at least for me, how I when I watched the movie, I got the sense that the machines were like these
You
freaking
have to
humans. They're like
you have to
how can
build
we
in some
make it
kind of
like yeah, they're like
imperfection, right?
we give you everything and you still say no. Like you guys are what?
But what
Masochists,
but
sadists, like
what's
you just
everything? What's everything? And who defines what everything is?
right, which is why people are never happy. They're never happy. If you say, oh, everything
What if there's
is
more?
exactly, right? That's the fundamental problem with humans. Like, what if there's more?
What if there's
But
more?
wait, you know,
Yeah.
it's because yeah, it meaning that, you know, even if you say, oh, everything is proven, everything is accounted for, they're like, no. Some people are gonna say, no, 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 no. There gotta be something else. There gotta be something else, something unquantifiable. So this is why the attraction to mystery. Why do people love mystery? Why do people
Yeah.
love the
Yeah,
part
I
that you
think
live?
that it's kind of like essentially the mystery and the unknownness of something.
It keeps you going.
I
It's like
think
you
so.
want to
I
find out
think
more.
it's a necessary component. Yeah.
Because if you
Y-
leave that out, then it's like, oh, there's nothing to know. There's nothing more
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
explore. Then oh, this is boring as you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. I think it's part of the essentially if this was a game, that would be the part of the mechanic, right? Because
Yeah,
I mean we even see it in the computer games, right? When you go to
constantly,
the end game,
constantly.
you'd rather prefer that there was like new levels and stuff to
Yeah,
uncover new stuff, to encounter new things, to learn new
and
things,
the
develop new stuff.
randomization keep you going because it's random. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I might hit the jackpot. I might this might happen. There's something else might come around, right?
Yeah.
So
It's some kind of
in that way,
hoping, anticipating. It's part of the mechanism of
and you
what
know, in
makes it
ancient
interesting.
societies, they always have these rituals, the mysteries. Like the ancient Greeks will have this special club, essentially religious order, where they have secret rituals. Like only the people who are in the club they
Of
know how
course.
that ritual works, or how it's supposed to be performed, everything. But it's very secret. Like you have to keep it a secret. There's only a selected people. It builds that mysticism, right? The idea that they, you know, they worship their Apollo or whatever, but they have a special ritual to gain favors or whatever, right? So it's like that. And a lot of people in ancient religions, you know, they do keep this. Like part of it has to be unknowable. It's almost like the subconscious way, like, you know, when we subconsciously, we know that the unknown is out there. So a lot of the time that is subconsciously represented by, I don't know, a figure of certain deity, or just a sense of it too, like where there is almost a sacredness to that, where the sacred mystery, right? The sacred thing about the life is that you're gonna almost pray to this entity of the unknown, and almost like it's both, it's two sides, right? The idea that is both the unknown both give you opportunity, is also calamity, right? So in that state of the unknown is what drives you to kind of find out what will happen. And this is also, I think, is partially also proven by the research in what motivates people. Like dopamine is the main thing. And they've done experiments where even for monkeys. So the idea is that, when they do the experiment, like they would train them to like, okay, I'll give, typical, give them banana. If you do a certain work, you get banana, right? So their brainwave will work a certain way. But if you introduce uncertainty, as in sometimes you work the same thing, sometimes
Yeah,
you get banana, sometimes you don't. And their dopamine level shoot up because they're like,
there's
sometimes I
anticipation.
don't, but then maybe next time I get it.
Yeah,
In the same way, human it light up in the same way, right? So humans want to do things because it's the anticipation. Is that the dopamine?
yeah. So
It's
that
the
kind
one
of
that,
also explains a little bit of the dynamic of gambling, right?
yeah,
Because you
the
don't know what you're gonna get.
anticipation. It's not like getting it doesn't really do much for people.
That's funny though. That's funny because like literally what you are hoping and what you're actually wanting, consciously at least, it seems like I want to get the thing, right?
Yeah, but
But
no,
what you're
you don't
actually
feel anything
enjoying,
once you get it.
yeah, the enjoyment is the
And
chase.
this applies everywhere from
Yeah,
pickup artists, like guys who pick up girls. They just want the experience of getting the girl. Like, she will be reticent, not wanting to do it. And then he will work on her and then actually get her to fall for him. And that's it. And then he bounced. Right? It's like, oh, the
yeah.
experience is over. I got what I wanted. Then there's no fun anymore. And then
That's
he
so
will. It's
strange.
strange, right? But that exactly is a loop. Like people do things. It's not because, it's just the dopamine, how it works. Like this is the anticipation chemical. It makes you work on things because it's the anticipation of getting it. And that's how you almost like it's the carrot that's dangling in front of your face, right? You're just like, this is how it is being motivated, what it motivates you to do stuff. So sometimes, you see, the thing is, we're fighting our biology day in and day out. It's like all these things changes how you feel, changes how you interpret the world. So that's why living is messy, man. Like it's the soup of chemicals that they kind of, okay, today I woke up wrong and therefore I'm pissed off. Or the next day I woke up great. I feel great. I feel this energy and is everything is great. That affects how you treat everything, right? If you're grumpy, you woke up grumpy, then you're going to be grumpy the whole day. If you don't intervene, that is, if you just let it kind of play out, which is why mental hygiene is important because, you got to get control. Dopamine is great, but like if you let that, you know, just go haywire, then you're just going to disrupt all your cycles. It's all going to go wrong because, that chase kind of
Yeah, but
feeling,
this
it's
is,
strong.
I mean, this is kind of a tangent at this point, but it's veers into that territory, yeah, natural as we're talking about it. But the question is, what is natural? What is it supposed to be? Because these days we have a problem because there are essentially so many hacks to the dopamine cycle, right?
Right.
Where again, the paradox is like, oh, you wanted more dopamine? Well, the system is not supposed to work that way, right? You get, what is it called these days? That the dopamine exhaustion or depletion, where you're
Yeah.
chasing that, you essentially triggering the system so much it burns out
Yeah.
almost, like,
Yeah.
right?
You don't get
Like with,
much in
yeah,
return.
with all this with all these systems that for entertainment we have
Yeah.
essentially,
Social
right?
media, all the,
Social media, yeah, you even YouTube, right? But even stuff like accessible drugs, like pot where it's legalized, it's also plugged into that, right? You get some of that and then you get a nice fat meal. It's also using all the same reward systems, like, and it's great and great for a while, but the if you keep
diminishing return.
overusing it, yeah, it's you burn out and that affects your mood and everything, right? The whole system. So how do you manage it? What's the proper one? Like, on why is it so exploitable these days, especially, right?
Because, that's the part where humans got so clever.
Yeah, for our own
They
good.
found ways to jack the system because this is
Yeah,
not how it's supposed designed to do. Because, like, look, your biology is what it is. They just developed the way how it's supposed, I mean, how it naturally could arise. But because you are so smart now, you are finding ways to kind of, yeah, play the system now. Before it's impossible because of the natural order of things. People are barely surviving. There's no way you can jack that dopamine system because all there is just survival. There's not much for you to do other than just, continue until you perish, right? So there's no way, no time for you to develop system by which to, nobody invented video games. Nobody invented these, no, found out about those drugs. They found out about all these things. So the more you experience this, to find out about the world, you start, oh, we can extract this to gain the benefit of whatever, right? And so more with modern society, yeah, you have all these things, and then they become commercialized, you know, profit driven, from cigarettes to weed to gambling to whatever.
yeah. There's also this idea of cheap dopamine that actually makes me think about. The other week, I don't know what happened. It was a weird day, right? But for some reason, I got this strong urge to smoke a cigarette out of nowhere, right? And I don't smoke. I haven't smoked cigarettes for many, many years. When I was younger, like, I dabbled one here, one there socially, but I got this urge all of a sudden. It was a weird day. I actually went out and bought a pack of cigarettes at the gas station.
Man, you did it.
I just followed through
You couldn't overcome.
because like I was almost like curious as like, what is this urge? Like, what is going on out of nowhere? Because I didn't even know what caused it, right? Because maybe something subconsciously, I saw a picture, an ad or something. But like, things in Canada are like, are really actually good with this, because you don't really see smoking in advertisement or anything like that. And they have this really atrocious packaging,
Yeah, they
which has
show
like
you how
rotting
bad it could be.
organs. So it was hilarious because at the gas station, I think the I think the clerk was literally asking me like, "Are you sure you want this or something?" And I'm like, "Yep." And like, he hands me the pack, and it's just a picture of like a rotten food or something. And I'm like, "No, I don't want this."
Wait, why
But
did he ask though? Because usually if you're a smoker, they're like, whatever.
it was so strange. Maybe because he saw I was unconfident or something, because I was buying something random, right? I don't know what cigarettes are. But it was funny because like, why is he asking me too? But I'm looking at this pack of cigarettes like, I don't want this. But then there's an urge. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it because there's an urge. Because this is how insane it is, right? This is how there's some kind of desire and urge. So I smoke it. I got something light. I smoke it. It's like, okay, it's cool. It's a little head rush. It's a little woozy. It's a little funky. Okay, no problem. But that night, like, going to sleep was so difficult because I felt my whole body just struggling. My heart was hurting. My blood was pumping in the veins. I was like, oh, this sucks, because like, system is not used to it, right? And I'm like, yeah, there's no way. There's no way I would be smoking, because just even the ritual is interesting. I like the smoking part because it's kind of like there's something primal in it, because our ancestors have done this for a long time. I like that part of it. But the cost of like essentially feeling like crap all the time and everything else, the prohibitive costs and the detrimental health effect, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna essentially get into it, right? But that was a funny example. So like, next day I like threw it out and I didn't want it anymore at all. But that was weird. Like, that's nothing like that happened in years. So out of nowhere, something like that happened. I think it has to do something with the dopamine system, because maybe I was bored or something. Maybe I wasn't doing maybe I was changing routines or something. But something tried to find like a replacement, maybe for a source of dopamine
Yeah.
or something. Because oh yeah, I heard an opinion that smoking cigarettes is so addicting that people who do smoke and cannot quit them, partly they may be doing it for the reason that that's their only main problem. It kind of streamlines all the stress and all the problem into this one fact, because the stress when you get addicted to cigarettes, the stress of not getting your hit is your only problem,
Right.
because you're only worried about satisfying that need. And there's something interesting even about that psychology. It's almost like you're kind of outsourcing all your problems into this one big one.
Yeah. So see, again, this is part where people have already concluded. Some very smart people have concluded what basically the definition of addiction is really. It comes down to there's something missing in your life, and
Yeah.
whatever substance that you're abusing is the one that it's a not a substitute, but really like a poor version of how you cope with it, right? Is you using that addiction as a way to kind of fill the void of what was missing in your life, right? So that's the only thing. So it's not the drug. The drug itself is,
But then why
it's
don't you, like, why are you not aware of what you're missing? Why don't you go for what you're missing?
problem is people don't. I feel like, well, first of all, to be fair, it's very
Something
hard.
subconscious.
It's very hard to be self-aware. Right? I think this is true that to be a self-aware person is not that easy. Some people can do it better than others, but also there's also what you call that avoidance as well. A lot of people, they avoid facing their issues because it's uncomfortable, right? They don't want to deal with it. They're running away from it. But the problem is, the more you don't deal with it, the more you run away with it, the more it's gonna come up. And so a lot of the times, like, these addictions are really just is the missing part that keep them addicted. If they have fixed that like social relationship
Right.
or whatever,
Yeah.
they would naturally quit very easy. The
Right.
only
Right.
reason is because the environment
Would
does
not be
not give
needed.
them what they wanted, or does not provide them with the whatever that's missing in their life, right? Then they're gonna abuse
Man, but
whatever
that
to just
is
keep it.
like so many people have problem with that, with addiction specifically these days. Like, why is that so prevalent?
Because there's nothing replacing that problem.
It kind of
It's
means that then the way of life of society is
it's fucked. Like,
that bad,
the way we're doing it
because
is
it's
kind
not
of.
serving the people of
It
the
is not.
society.
It is
Yeah.
not. It's not serving most of us. I just say that it's not serving most of us, and we get very little return for what we're doing. It only serves the few people who can, gain the benefit of all this system. So most of the people
Man, so
are.
it all goes back to that.
I mean, that's reality, man. That's just
All the
what we.
roads
That's
lead
what.
to Rome.
That's fundamental. Is the problem is that this structure is
Man,
flawed. Whatever we're doing, this kind of game of like, chasing efficiency, all this kind of like, this will make life better, blah blah. It's PR.
so
It's
tired of
all like
efficiency.
to show you that, you need to be part of the system because you're gonna get you whatever. But really, you're being played, right? You're being played by the people who control all the levers, all the leverages, and they want you to be this way. They want you to just stressed out, overworked, and just, because you think that, this is the only way. There's no other way. I have to do this because, how else am I gonna survive and this and that, right? It's just like, yeah, there are better ways to structure society, but we're not doing it, right? Because certain interested party doesn't want it to be that way, right? So I mean, the current way, yeah, all the stuff that happens, like, yeah, we can feel unhappy. We feel unhappy with the modern way of life, but then are we doing anything about it? I mean, right? Everybody can complain about, dating sucks. This new technology introduce all this problem within this, or social media to introduce all these social problems and psychological problems. Like, yeah, we see it, but then it's almost like we're so hopeless against it. Like, we're so hopeless. It's inertia too. Like, people don't want to, I see the problem. But imagine, right? An overweight person trying to lose weight. That's work. You need to
Yeah, it's
actually do
definitely a lot
work
of
to fix the
inertia for
problem.
sure.
So socially, yeah, everybody just like, yeah, we
And
recognize the problem, but like,
changing
who's
is
gonna do anything
difficult,
about it?
and starting new stuff is difficult. But I think you're right. Yeah, it comes down to that personal initiative and personal responsibility, especially if you want for your stuff to improve. But that's always kind of is a thing, right? Always a factor. It's kind of like, yeah, the world is not exactly, it's not gonna care for you to the extent where it's gonna handle your problems. It's not. Ideally, it will be a system that's conducive to a healthy lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not really how it works. And for some reason, the world is really moving in its own direction at this point. It's like it's a whole other system. It's a whole other organism that is separate from you at this point.
I feel like we're not very separate from the rule of the jungle. Like the evolutionarily, I just say from every, hard to say because when we first talk about this, we did say, that human society are supposed to live in more or less harmony, right? Back in the ancient times, it's not pretty all the time, but like, in general, they're more closer to the natural order of things.
Yeah.
But now we're more and more, it's kind of the deviancy is going larger and larger. We're going away from that because we're artificially building everything in our kind of little world. So that's different. The rule of the jungle still applies, right? You can have a group of animals who can be social, but they can also go to war against each other. Like the chimpanzees, for example, it's proven they have wars. They actually do it like the humans do. That's just kind of how the intelligences allow it to happen. But also, the rule of the jungle is either you adapt or you get eaten. And I think that part of it applies to humans because you have all these different levels of people, let's just say, right? By their virtue of whatever circumstance or what have you. Now, human societies are being divided by money, right? Like we use this basically fictional thing. Money doesn't mean anything if you don't want it to mean anything. It only means whatever we want it to mean.
Yeah, especially when you can print it out of your ass.
Yeah. So, see, this is the game where we are dividing people along these lines, right?
Yeah.
Along who has the more socioeconomic advantages, Naturally, as the game is being played, biology and evolution still applies. You as a species, like you as from an individual to a group, you are trying to adapt to the environment. You are trying to do things like just as you observe in nature. Some of these animals are amazing. Like their camouflage, their mimicry, their whatever mechanism that they develop is help them to survive. So
it's kind of reminded me of this one story about some deep sea worms that I saw the other day. Some Russian scientist was like explaining it with such passion. It was just contagious because it was just, it's fascinating really. But it was in deep sea. There's a lot of weird stuff happening because there's some unique conditions there where you can have a little volcano underneath the ocean, an eruption. But because it's so deep with so much pressure, there can be water that is hotter than 100 degrees Celsius, but it's not boiling because the boiling temperature at the pressure is different. It's at different conditions. So you have this unique environment where there is extremely hot water pockets in the, in some of the parts of the ocean. So there are whole different unique ecosystems evolved there with unique creatures that can only live there. And he was talking about these weird worms that like produce some kind of bacteria that is hazardous to any life, but the worms develop some kind of sheath in which they can pocket themselves in so the bacteria doesn't hurt them or something. And then he had an example of some giant shrimp that lived close to those hot pockets, and their whole survival strategy was to gather some kind of bacteria out of the hot water. But the water is so hot is that if you get too close to it, you boil alive. So that you have a bunch of this shrimp which have like the antenna, they're burned antenna because they get so close to it, that they get damaged. But throughout a long time of them living in that mode, what happened is that their eyes went completely blind because they don't need to see in the depth. But their eyes develop these spots that are sensitive to heat recognition. Mm-hmm. So their vision is pure like heat vision.
Yeah.
And that's insane when you consider all of this. Like, what is going on? Like life adapts. Adaptation of life to the environment, to the circumstances. That's a fascinating and like very central theme to life in general. And it's got to be present in us humans as well.
Yeah, which is one saying here, we develop this. And so everybody go with the script, right? The script, we understand our worldview as we grow up, we're being taught, we're being, and you see this thing just keep going and going, where the people who has, like just say better circumstance, like just say their initial role of the game is great. They got good stats, right? Right off the bat, right? And they, of course, form their own structures and they perpetuate their system as they go from their past on, from their parents, and so on and so forth. So they are maintaining that lever of power where they are able to influence everything in society that is crucial for them to keep their position. That's a survival strategy, right? Like, okay, they adapt to it. It's okay, I was born in this rich family, and we have these rules, and we have these things, and we just continue to do these things, right? So they were perpetuating their sphere of influence, and different people coming up have their different survival strategies. This is why we develop, and there is social mobility in the way that, you know, people do change, they do change their circumstances, but there is a vast kind of rule that's being set on there. And this doesn't go against the natural rule of things. This is just how it is. But the thing is, the environment that you live in really affects how you are or how you behave. I've seen this research that's very fascinating, that scientists have concluded, they did some experiments, and they found that rich people are less compassionate. That's the right word. They're less compassionate because the way they live their life, because they have money, because they don't have quote unquote problems that most people deal with when it comes to
they
cost
don't
of living.
sympathize with people,
So
essentially,
they
right?
basically live in a bubble.
Yeah.
It's not that they're malicious. They're not doing
That's
this
the
out of being.
environment.
That's the environment where there's no change, right?
Yeah. They
So
don't
you
need to be
see, they
compassionate.
don't need to change themselves. They don't
Yeah.
need. They can't. They don't experience compassion because you never got a sense to see what it's like for another person to experience their way of life. If you're poor, you see this all the time, right? You can feel what
Yeah.
another person experiences because you have felt it. That's more common. But when you live in a world where everything is catered to, there's no problem. You can pay somebody to deal with it. You're not even dealing with the problem. So imagine, right? Eventually, you will be less capable because you're not training yourself to do the things that you have to do. Like, if I have a problem happen with my car, I fix it myself because I try to save money. I learn how to fix a car. I learn how to do these things. So in that way, you can be trained to be more capable because you're dealing with all these problems, and that helps you to better your brain, to make you more competitive, to make you better, essentially, right? You deal with more situations, you know how to deal with them. The conclusion is kind of, I mean, nobody says this, but it's kind of saying, yeah, don't worship that rich person you think is such a paragon of
Yeah.
virtue of whatever, because you know what? Some of them can't. I will say, you know, they would develop this because of their environment. They have less stimuli, meaning some of the decisions that they make are being made in a vacuum. This is why we sometimes see like, oh, why are these billionaires making these decisions? Doesn't make any sense. And it's kind of true sometimes, where they're spending
Yeah,
all
because
this money for
their environment
doing,
is different.
the environment is different. They're not making I mean, how can they if they don't have the correct information? If they don't, if they, you know, again, this is not to say, oh, this is across the board or whatever, but it makes sense when you think about it. Oh, the environment you live in really kind of forge who you are, right? So I just think that part of the thing that we need to do is you need challenges in your life. It doesn't matter which social, economic circumstance, situation you're in. You can be poor, you can be rich, whatever. You still need to find challenges for yourself. You still need to find, okay, something worthwhile for you to get at. Like, that will be your life purpose. Because otherwise, if it's all it is just money, you can get to that point and then you're like, you basically lose yourself. Like, okay, well, what now? I don't have anything now. Even after everything is taken care of. So what? Now, like, your brain gonna deteriorate. You're gonna be so in a bubble. You live in such a bubble. Well, you won't be you basically can't do anything anymore because everything is taken care of. You're like an infant who's been pampered all the time and you don't even know how to do things anymore. So that's why that I feel like as a human person, like you need to. I know a lot of time, you know, people be like, "Oh, I want to get rich, I want to make all this money, and therefore I don't have to worry about any of this." Again, this is the dopamine thing. It's that drive to make more money. It's like you anticipate all these good things that will happen, but once you get there, you're like, "Oh, this is different than I thought it was gonna be." Right? Where you
Yeah.
still gonna hit that roadblock where you're like, okay, but now what? So I got all this money, my life situation have improved, but I don't know what now. You lose yourself again. It's like, oh, so it's like that. I got the reward, and now what? I need to move on, right? So I don't know why I went on this tangent, but this is kind of what remind me of, right? The idea that stimuli is very important. So I thinking that for any organism, that's how everything works. Is the stimuli is there, like you were talking about the shrimp, right? Like this is my environment. I
Yeah,
need
that's
to
what they
be
have to deal with.
better at knowing where the heat is, and therefore I develop that way. So in the same way, if you think about how our social structure are being formed, a lot of the times we do things that we don't think about, but we're doing it because this is kind of ingrained into you by your education, what you learn, what you've seen, what you heard. And this is why I think it's important to kind of really be self conscious of the sort of thing that comes into your brain, and all the information that you receive, right? If you don't think about it, you will be influenced by it. You will act accordingly. Like it's almost like a thing can be false, but you can act as if it's true. If you believe a thing hard
Right.
enough, then that will be how you carry yourself. That will be how you would treat it as real. Because it's almost like the brain is so easy to fool. You can fool yourself into believing anything, into any sort of like, because once it clicks.
But there are also like useful heuristics that people consciously like that. For example, like to treat every gun as loaded. There's a heuristic like that. It may not be loaded for real, but just to simplify it,
Right.
and make sure it's just habitual that you handle it with care because it's that dangerous, you might as well just believe it and think it. It's a habituation thing. So in a similar way, I can see how adopting certain beliefs is good like that. But what I'm curious about, like essentially based on this discussion, right, based on these topics that we've been discovering and discussing for the last couple of episodes, is a conscious involvement and practice of belief, essentially. Is there any kind of practical belief that you can adopt that would benefit your life, essentially? That's what I'm interested in. So I'm going to think about this a bit more. Maybe we'll have continuation in this discussion eventually. But I wanted to just give a couple of examples of the comments and communication I tried to have with this guy based on my, I guess, I don't know if it's materialist or what approach, because like when I first saw those videos, I was curious, but then I heard this very distinct part about when he said, oh yeah, if you knew like the nature of reality, you'd be able to walk through walls. And that instantly took me out because that's a claim. That's a claim. And like I went on one of the videos and I says like, okay, like, can you demonstrate it? Because if you don't know anybody who can do it and you can do it yourself, then like, why would anybody believe that claim, right? I was just droning on like, what's the evidence of this? Because it's a claim. Yeah, if I knew how to poop gold, I would. But what's the point of saying that? Yeah. So I gave him a bunch of paragraphs on this, right? Like I was trying like to say like, okay, if this is practical, what's the practical level, right? What is the point of it? And he said, you're still not appreciating the truth that it doesn't care what is useful to you. What's true is true, regardless of what it doesn't do for you. Which to me, it seemed like an evasion of my question.
Yeah, that's like,
It's not answering anything.
because
What's true is great, but why can't it be demonstrated? Essentially, is my
yeah,
point,
and
right?
it's like, okay, who to say that what you're saying is for real, right? Yeah, truth is the truth, but who
All
says
I'm
that
saying,
what
like,
you're
why
telling?
can't that be demonstrated? That's all I'm interested in. Because if
Yeah.
reality is like that, well, we should be able to see it like that. So that's what I try to reply with. I was saying to him that words are not reality; it has to be demonstrable. And he said, "I'm pointing to things you can become conscious of for yourself. You easily walk through walls in your dreams." I did not claim humans can walk through walls. I claimed that the reason you cannot walk through walls is because you are imagining solidity. It is a very serious thing to understand. Solidity, you are imagining solidity. So if you were
But if
if
you
you
can,
understood that you're doing this and you could unimagine solidity, you'd be able to walk through walls. But to me, that's still a claim. So why has nobody in the world, why is nobody able to demonstrate this if this is the case?
yeah, how do you think the wall
Yeah,
could
he's still
become
making,
liquidity, right?
yeah,
If you think
he's
liquidity and then
making the
you are able to go
claim,
through it.
yeah, that your mind is constructing the solidity of the wall. If that is the case, how do I make my mind deconstruct the wall? If
Yeah.
mind is affecting reality, right? This is the point I was droning on, and then I wrote him like several more paragraphs, specifically pointing out that dreams don't interest in me. I am only interested in reality, which is distinct from dreams, right? Kind of like assaulting his points because he was referring to the
But he's saying reality is dream.
yeah, I'm saying demonstrate it, and he says no, it's true, it's true. So he never answers it. Then I think a bunch of more people engaged. They tried to back him up. Like nobody like agreed with me or anything. Like, everybody was kind of on his side. I was pointing out that the fact that like the belief has nothing to do with reality. Like your belief cannot influence reality. That was my point.
Well, I mean, I think practically it can, but that again, it's the idea that, we are
Like on an
always
example of a wall, your belief cannot do nothing
right.
with that.
But
That's what I'm
I
saying.
guess in certain cases, right, like that, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, exactly.
But that's what example. He said that if you understood that you are somehow constructing the solidity of the wall, you could walk through the wall. To me, that means mental affecting physical reality. It's magic.
yeah,
That's magic. And he says that's correct. So there were a bunch of discussions there, and eventually, like he chimed in with his last comment that just saying reality is a dream. That's it. I was simply going back that it doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't change anything about it for anybody. And he never addressed any of this. To me, this is the biggest problem, is that, whether you don't have a time or whatever, but at no point he addressed any of my queries. Why is that?
that's just because he can't.
Either
That's
he
just
can't, but if this is your channel and these is your points and somebody actually took the time of 12 hours out of their life and gave you a big amount of constructive feedback, right? Genuinely trying to understand it, and that's all you got? That reality is a dream, deal with it, bro? No, I don't
it's
buy it.
very typical of these.
It's BS.
It's very typical of these. This feels like scamming, right?
It
Like the
is. That's what
idea
I'm
that
saying.
you just because they do this tactic all the time. It's like when you try to criticize, they're saying, "Just deal with it, bro." It's like trust me, bro. That's
To
it.
me, it's the biggest contention point is that like, oh, the reality is like that, whether you want it or not. This is demagoguery. You're not answering my questions. If reality is like that, you should be able to answer these questions, which are self-evident and self-demonstrable. But all you have is these logical leaps, which are based on belief. That's all. That's it. So to me, there's a lot of interesting philosophical discussion that's happening out of it. But ultimately, I do not agree that reality is a dream, because a dream is a dream and it's malleable. Reality is not like that. In a dream, you can walk through a wall. In reality, you can't.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't found anything that prove just the same with look, you can believe in a matrix, right? You can believe that, oh, this is all a projection, it's all like simulated. Okay. But there's still no way for you to prove, okay, this is all stimulated. How are you going to prove it, right? I don't think anybody have ever in the real world, as far as we know, have proven that, oh, this is all, illusion. This is all projection from 3D space or 4D space, whatever, right? That all this claim about in the simulated theory of the world. I mean, sure, from a fiction point of view, yeah, Matrix is a great movie. Make you think about nature of reality, sure, but as far as we're concerned right now, we haven't proven that yet. I mean, it's fine to have these theories. It's fine to to think, oh, this is how. Again, that's just their opinion, right? They think this is the way. I mean, if they don't have any uh, financial motives for perpetuating this, then it's just like, okay, that's just your idea of how to construct reality, right? But there are many different ways to do it. There are many different ways to think about this stuff, and then even if theoretically you're correct, you can construct all these things. Oh, this might be true. The Matrix, we're all dreaming, right? If we wake up and there will be another reality, okay. But how do you do it? If you can't do it, then how do you isn't the way by saying it doesn't mean that we should all be able to do it then?
Exactly. Yeah. This is why, I mean, this is such an interesting space, the whole spirituality space. I'll give you a couple more examples of what I've been exploring essentially. There were 3 books that I read by Jed McKenna, who is kind of this known as this anti-guru type of guru, who at this point I'm not sure. I think he might be a fictional character of the author, or I don't know if it's truth or not. But it paints this picture of this lauded spiritual master in US who was kind of very cut and dry about what enlightenment is, and he was very big on rejection of spiritual teachers and all these claims and simplifying everything to the maximum, where the point was that you kind of just enjoy reality without constructing any more bullshit. That was the overlying theme from what I understand. Because when you look at all these traditions and teaching which require you to meditate for 17 decades, it's like it becomes like, what for? Like, what are you expecting to happen, So it was very interesting. It was very unique in that regard. So I liked his approach on that, because his big thing is that if there are all these spiritual masters enlightened and whatever, and they're so effective, even these days, why are there students not enlightened? None of them. And if they are enlightened, where are they? Which ones? So his question was like, if you were to approach any spiritual teacher who is claiming to be, I'm a spiritual teacher, if you were to ask them, what's the percentage of your students who get enlightened? If their answer is not like 100% or anything that they know, then it's bullshit.
Then you're a bad teacher.
Then what's happening, right? And I think, to me, it uncovered the whole nebulosity of this whole concept of what enlightenment is. Like, what is it? So many people, anytime you talk to people online or anywhere, everybody has their own ideas about it, which also could mean that it is unreal, that is just a constructed concept, etc. So it's just to show that everywhere there is a potential for confusion, subjective understanding of it, interpretation, misinterpretation, to the point where nothing is real like that, especially in the space of philosophy, just mental world, abstract thinking. It all just seems like just a little mental exercise and fun way to think about what could be. But if you really divorce from all of that and just zoom into the immediate now and the environment that you have and the reality that you have, and concentrate on what you can do with that, I think that's the only real spirituality that you can do. Just live in real life that is in front of you.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's there already.
Because I don't know, I want to say this is like this. So for now, it's 2 full episodes of us talking about this guy's point of view. It's like, it's a mental gymnastic. Somebody did some mental gymnastic, and we're like, is this real or not?
Yeah.
I mean,
this makes sense.
Let me just say, I think it's true that this is a waste of time. It's kind of true, but there's a point to it. We realize that, this is the truth of it. Like, it is a waste of time. Everybody's doing their mental gymnastics, okay?
Yeah.
Just feel what's here, right? Like, okay, does something feels wrong, then something is wrong, okay? You just go according to what makes your life better, right? Because sometimes, like, when you get too mental about things, it's mental. Like, everything is all up here, where you're ignoring everything else, because that's why you don't want to think too much. If you think too much, it's going to be always and constantly about those things. Then you're forgetting to see, actually, today is a good day. Why am I worried about, because it's really again, what you consume.
Is that like another form of escapism?
I guess so.
Kind of seems that way.
Yeah,
too,
like you don't want to deal with, for something you don't want to deal with, and you're like, I just get busy. I just get busy thinking about stuff. I get busy formulating my framework of the world.
Yeah.
So that
But the trap is here, and I've fallen into it a lot, which to me, like, this is why these days I'm thinking, like, is this whole industry and space of spirituality is this just one another trap to be trapped in and to be stuck in and to waste your time for nothing? Because what do you get out of it? Like, what's the end result? What are you looking for, right? What do you think is going to happen?
Which is you wouldn't know anyway. Like, I have told you this before. I am not spiritual in that way. Like, I'm curious about it, okay? But I'm not practicing any of it because, like I said, from my point of view, my number one thing is I'm lazy. I don't care. I don't want to. That's work. Okay, don't give me work. I'm already working enough. I don't want work. But the good thing about that is that because of that, I'm like, yeah, I feel like what all these things is just like I said, mental gymnastics. You're trying to figure, like you're trying to come up with something where it's like cool story, bro. Like all I can say is like cool story. Like, okay, as a story, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
very
that's
inventive,
creative.
very
Yeah.
creative. Okay, I admire that. But to say that, oh, you gotta believe in this. This is the way. This is how it's supposed to be. I'm like, um, how about no?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
because
because for
even
you,
with
it still comes down to what is the purpose of you believing into it. Why do you need to do that? Why are other people interested in making you believe that way? As all these things are part of the equation. And to me, this is why, like, I'm just being skeptical. And to me, just mental gymnastics in combination with the reluctance, inability to answer any of the questions about it. There was another video where I commented on what was called "What is Fake Spirituality," which I actually liked. It had some nice points. One of the closing points was that spirituality culminates in falling in love with reality itself, including its infinite illusions, transcending the ego and finite self. But I like the falling in love part. I think that's a good outcome. So if you love what you're experiencing, essentially you're happy, right? You could say it's happiness. Yeah, I think spirituality should help with that. So then ultimately, if you are just find a way to be content and happy, that's it. That's the only thing that matters. What you call it and how you do it,
yeah.
doesn't matter.
But what it remind me of again is again, I don't know. I keep going back to this, but like it keep me now thinking about the scenario of Dune, where imagine if Paul didn't go through with it. He's just like, okay, I see the potential futures like this, but what if I just say no? I'm gonna live
Right,
my
but
life.
she contemplated that.
But because he was so wound up into that theory, like into the kind of, oh, this is my responsibility now. I don't
Yeah,
want the result. The more he doesn't want that result, is what happens, right? The more he thinks that I can change it. He's trying to change the fate of the universe. He's trying to do all this stuff.
yeah.
Inevitably, you actually walk right into it. You're right, making it
Think so.
worse. You make
Yeah, I
everything
think
worse than
so.
just
You're manifesting your worst fears, but it's almost like you're blind to it, right? Because it's the hubris. You think you as one man can fix the whole world. That's the
yeah.
deeper lesson
That's
there,
the
right?
hubris. He's saying, "Oh,
And
I
that's the
have all this
hubris.
ability, and therefore I must, And then he
But it's
got
not
himself
enough.
to the corner because it's like everybody pushing him. You got to drink the water of life to see all this potentiality. I was like, okay. And then once he did it, he's almost like he's so I don't know how like he says that like after drinking it he sees the way, but really is that really how it's
But essentially what happened is that then he realized it later himself, is that he was trapped by it, right? He was
yeah
trapped by the future. Because what is it to know the future? It's the same thing as being trapped by it.
yeah
Then there's no more potentialities, so to
you
say, right?
can't change anymore because
It's like locked in because you see it.
you make it into that and
Yeah.
you make yourself believe that oh I have to be this person to do
Yeah.
this thing for it to but what about all the ramification that happened after, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he changed the way of the Fremen, that will change the way how they see themselves, see the
Yeah.
way of, and all these ramifications came to be that he failed. In the
Yeah.
book, he failed, right? Not going to spoil anything, but like he failed, and then it has to be
And
continued by,
also maybe this knowing, like the knowledge brings with it responsibility. I don't think any human is able to accommodate such
wield
responsibility
that power.
and withstand it
Yeah.
and wield that power. right? Because it's a double-edged sword like that. But it's too much. The reality is too complex. The people are too complex to the point where you need to understand your own limitations and how much you can influence the world, which means ideally you would also curb your ambitions accordingly. But nobody seems to know that, because I think that would be like the ultimate wisdom, right? Because if you know, there's certain humility involved, right? You're like, you know what?
Sacrifice
I
and
can
give
for
up.
certain see that I can jump over here, and that's where I'll cap it.
Yeah. Look,
That's gonna be it.
I mean, you see this everywhere, right? For example, just even now, but also before, Joe Biden, he ran for president even when he's basically too old to do it, and he still went for it. He's still like, I want it, right? Because he's been vice president for a long time. He's like, but I can has it. But then he should know that he's already mentally not there. Like, there's no way that he's able to do the honor of
Well,
the office
that's
anymore. But he's
yeah,
like, but I want it. Imagine him running all this time in politics. It's like, finally, I got my chance to be the president of the United States. This is what I wanted. And even when he knows that he can't really do it anymore at that age,
yeah,
it's like, nope, I'm still going to do it.
yeah.
And he forced his
That
way
was
into
ugly.
all this. And then everybody already sees it. Oh, this is a disaster. Like, you can't even function like you're
Yeah,
already at the age where you should be retiring, but then you still want that power and you still went for it. Same thing was right now with Donald Trump. He's also up there in age. No matter how
it's
well you think
yeah.
you
No,
you
that's
can.
the problem of lots of let's say career men in general. You see a lot of this in fighting too, where it's because
Beyond.
the ego doesn't want to see, like, no, I am the one who can do anything at all. It never wants to accept that reality is not like that. So in fighting, eventually when you're past your peak,
Get
things get
beaten.
difficult, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And
things
you
get
lose.
terrible. And there are examples where people just run their whole health and their brain into the ground because they're not willing to see that they have to stop. They can't accept it. Like, no, I can do it. Again, it's this arrogance, this hubris. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to yourself, to everybody else. I can't believe they let him run the country, man. This is so strange to see that
You
happened.
start a whole war right now, and
Yeah.
then now you can't finish it. This is how you're gonna. Same thing with Vladimir Putin starting the Ukraine
Yeah.
war.
All
Like, how are you
these
gonna stop
old
this now?
men, all these old people
They
just
all
out
think
of
that,
their
"Oh, we
minds.
we have the power. We can do this. We can, blah blah blah." And then now what? We're in this mess now because of
Yeah.
just people who doesn't know when to quit. Yeah, that's the problem that we deal with, right? It's how do you balance your individual ego versus what's best, not just for yourself, but also for the society in general, right? A lot of these, we see way too many selfishness going on right now, right? All these, people in power or whatever, right? They just continue to run this thing just because they has the power, right? And they don't want anything to change. They don't want anything to, because they want to keep it going. But the problem
Hmm.
is you can't keep going. Things
Yeah.
has to change. And you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
this
Something
all
will have to
over the
give.
world. Okay, like, for example, what's happening in South Korea is the entire political structure, everything is catered to you know, the aged population. So they vote them in, they keep them in power, they get their pension, you know. But the young people are suffering right now in that country because they have to pay into that pension system. So they are giving up their future for them. Like, it's just not fair. All I'm saying is just not fair. And then they can perpetuate the system because they are the one in power and they are able to, to protect their interests, right? This is what's happening all over the world. So this is why you can't have nice things, because things are changing, things are developing, and you need to shift focus sometimes. And you can't just continue to do the old thing over and over, thinking you're going to get the same, different result. It's always going to be the same. And then there will be a collapse. And, this is probably what's going to happen. Something fundamental has to change. It's like you continue, just like you were saying about these uh, athletes or fighters, they keep fighting even though they're past their prime. They already should be retiring and they continue to do it. They're going to fail. That is absolutely will be the result, right?
Yeah.
Eventually
Because
you will fail.
ideally you quit it when you're at the top.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can do. The only guy that I know in recent history that's done this is that Khabib.
Yeah.
He got the GOAT status, and he's like, all right, I'm done. That's the right way to do it.
Just
While you
enjoy
still
your
have your
life.
mind,
Yeah.
you still have your body and health, but then of course, yeah, I think it's because that's if you achieve that greatness, it's easy to do that. But to many, well, you burn yourself up on the way to greatness, right? You never achieve
Yeah.
it because you think like it's just about the corner, and you're willing to give it your all, but you may not have enough. You may not. You may be just the Icarus club
See,
flying too close to the
that's
sun.
the part where it's so hard to gauge how you're supposed to live your life, right? Because at
Yeah.
one point, at one hand, we can see why the ego is helpful to have self-confidence, have all these things does lead to great things if you do it right, right? We do see these things kind of are the levers of motivation and stuff like that. But on the other hand, we also understand, yes, you need hubris. All the stories, the oldest story in the world tell you that you need to be more to guard against hubris. That you need to have humility, right? Because that's also true. You are not invincible. You are not who you think you are, right? So the messiness of human existence is that we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way? We don't know. There are different people saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But in the actual practical manner, there's always some caveats. It's like, oh, well, it doesn't apply in this case. Well, it doesn't apply in that case, but not this case. All kinds of stuff going on in life, right? There are different way to the things can happen. That's just the nature of reality. It's just ever changing. So there's nothing that you can apply that's like an idiom that's always true. Like some kind of saying oh, this is the operating principle, and if you do it all the time, it will 100% be always correct. No, there will be caveats, but I just think that flexibility is kind of necessary. Like mentally, you should not be accepting anything that's just like completely concrete. Like, oh, this is going to be the thing. You know how some people are so dead set on a certain way of thinking that they're so rigid that they're not. That basically are suffering more than other people because they just
Hmm.
unwilling to change, right? And if you're unwilling to change when the things change, you're gonna suffer. That's just math. That's just how it is, you know. So I think that flexibility is very important to basically say to yourself, okay, I am somebody in the world, but I'm not gonna be right 100% of the time, right? You have to be willing to learn what happens in life. Like, okay, this is a lesson, right? And even treat everything as a lesson. Anything that happened that you didn't get your way, it's like that's a lesson. Okay, what I can do, what I can change, what else I can do to get the result that you want, or to achieve what's gonna make it work for you, right? This is what we've been talking about. We've been conversing about all this spirituality things, and really the fundamental thing that is really at the crux of it is to how to be, right?
Yes.
Is how to think, how to feel, what's the right way to do it. There's no right way, but there is some ways in which it's gonna benefit you a lot more than remain too vacillating or too rigid in your thinking. So it's kind of like there's always a right degree, right? It's like the Goldilocks zone, the right temperature, there's always something in that range. So you as a human being, you have to find what that is for you and what that axis is going to be like that makes you work better. That means some job is going to be working better for you than others. There are going to be some careers that fit for you because that means you need to know yourself more, right? To
Yes.
understand what makes you tick, to choose the career that fits you, to find the people that you can interact with better, to kind of have a better life because you want to have less friction. Doesn't mean completely frictionless because that's also terrible, right? You want challenges, you want the right kind of challenges, you want the right kind of friction, but not too much, right? So that's the balance that everybody has to achieve for a better life. That's it. That's the practical thing about it. It's not because, oh, I can believe a certain entity and they just gonna fix all the problem for you. No, that's not how it's that's not so it doesn't matter how spiritual you want to be or what religion or whatever you believe in. If you can't fix the thing for yourself, if you can't fix all the problem in your life, then there's not none of that is gonna work ever. You can't just say, oh, if I believe in Jesus, Jesus is gonna help me and solve everything. He's not gonna do that. You gotta do it yourself, right? So even Jesus is gonna say, "Oh, you gotta fix yourself, man."
Yeah, because
That's
how would it work?
like that's Yeah, so it doesn't matter what you believe, okay? You can believe any religion if it helps you, great, but that fundamental basis of it is has to be like, okay, am I living better, right? Am I having a better life right now, given all the challenges I'm facing, given all the problems, whatever? Am I having the right tool to solve the problem, right? That you have to make sure that you can actually I mean, I have nothing. There's nothing wrong to kind of see life as these challenges and problems to be solved, and you can certainly. But that's not all the question. You can't be like try to solve every single thing. So sometimes it's like, okay, there are things that you need to solve physically, mentally, whatever, so that you can move on with your life. Where it's everybody has this kind of version in their head, like how they want their life to be. But I think that it's more like you have to understand the whole picture enough that you also leave some room for surprises and for things to develop not
Hmm.
the way that you thought was going to be. So that means you got to have an open heart. You got to open, be sensitive, and you know to let these things in, and not just be like, I want it this way, I want it exactly this way, and there's I'm not going to change. No, you can't do that. That's not how life will work. You have to change, but it's like how much change, right? It's like the people who have a really content life or who have really great life by all definition is that they're able to know when to stop and when to start. These are the people that are master of life. Like they can master every interaction in their life where they can like they know exactly when to start and when to stop a thing. The problem is knowing that difference because a lot of time we either go way too much, like go way too far, or not nearly enough, right? We start stuff that we don't want to do. We don't finish the stuff that we're supposed to finish.
Hmm.
It's always this kind of like, that's why when you have too much thought in your head, so, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to have this thing. And that's why you have no, you have to find some kind of rhythm, some kind of structure.
Yeah, like it's because that would also make it almost like seamless and automatic, right? Where just one thing follows another. I think that's something I'm looking for something like that, which would make it even decision making would make it easier. But that's like not reliance on anything external, but external environment would be part of it, right? It's hard to understand or even define it for yourself what a good version of that would look like, right? What are all the right components? Like, how do you gauge when you are content or when the good thing is happening? I don't know. I think you can only really do it post factum. I've been in some, I've been in some even projects at work, which were like, well, that was cool. That was really great that we did it that way, right? It was still like work. There was challenges to overcome, but it wasn't like critical where it's like, this is terrible. This is nothing is working, because I've been part of those as well. So I have enough of a experience to understand how bad things can be and how good things can be. But in terms of defining exactly what the components for the good part is, it's difficult. And also, like, it doesn't do anything because the reality is going to be unique every time, right? Every endeavor is going to be unique. Every project and team is going to be unique. Every little thing is going to be unique. This is why these days I'm essentially not being too critical in terms of, I'm trying, not to judge too much, like the stuff that I'm even consuming, right? I'm trying to appreciate everything for what it is. And I really like that approach because, again, that's also a certain stance. There's also certain belief, I guess, involved there, right? Because I'm choosing to, okay, let's just see what it is and let's find something to appreciate in it. And I think that's really helpful because that changes your whole stance. It's kind of like instead of dividing the world into black and white, which is black is everything I don't like, and white is stuff that I like, you remove that distinction. You kind of just see what you can like in general in anything, and that helps you see something that you like in everything.
Yeah, because I also
Yeah.
keep thinking about. See, this is why some of these are generalities that we are speaking, where in actual life experience, it might not apply all the time. I keep thinking about the idea of, okay, let's just say if we read into the gray of everything and not black and white, okay, you can understand things in the world that happens like that. But there's also a case where you need to have a sense of justice as well. You can't just be like, oh, just because things do happen, things are gray, that you embrace the gray, and then what? You can allow these things that are permissible, like a terrible thing that can be because you can explain it. Oh, because he had a terrible childhood and therefore he's doing this. Well, sure, okay. To explain away the psychology, okay. But you also have rule of law, right? These are things that you do need to accept as the standard and not changeable, because human behavior has to be sometimes you're gonna have to make rules. There has to be
so
a
still
specific
have some kind of standards.
So you can understand the world in its nuance and gray areas, but then there are things in the world where you could be like, okay, this is black and white. In this case, in this specific manner, it has to be black and white. There's no reason to
Right.
You can't just be like, oh well, because this excuse, this is the problem. They say it's like they have been doing studies about the way people's mind works, and in this case, when they were testing the psychology of women versus men, men have more of a judgmental kind of mental capacity where they judge everything for right or wrong. They do judge it, right? So if a terrible person did some crime, they're very tough. Like their opinions about that person will be like,
yeah, because you have certain standards to
like
worry
that's
about.
a bad guy. He had to go to jail. It has to, like when you ask these people what the sentence is gonna like, how the punishment should be, they're just straight to jail, right? They don't even question it. But some of the women participants, they will be like, they will give you some, not excuses, but like reasons why that person, like they're empathetic to their case. Oh, but they have a terrible childhood and this. But that means they're not making judgmental calls, meaning they have more likelihood of just giving a pass. And this has been observed in the work environment, in corporate environment, where the HR, and not just HR, but like, women in general would give the pass too much, where they just destroy the rule. Where
that is interesting,
when people stop caring, like the female boss will be like, there's no rule in a way, like they will give pass to a certain individual by not considering the ramification of, if you do that, then other people are not going to take the rule seriously anymore, because you just gave a pass for the offender. In that one case, that means, oh, well, I can do it too. Why should I obey the rule when you give that person clearly a pass? What's the standard, right? So again, this is not an indictment that women don't make right decisions. It's just that in their capacity for empathy, sometimes that can, affect the way how they judge things.
Yeah, that can be detrimental to essentially there has to be a systematic approach, right? And that's why kind of men are more or less, have been in charge of designing civilization and rules, because any kind of system would have to be rule-based for it to work.
Yeah, there has
because
to be,
otherwise it's too chaotic.
Yeah, you can't be, oh, pass for this person because of circumstances. Well, what about this case?
Yeah, what are the rules?
What about, so for society to function, certain things definitely need this kind of judgmental call. Like black is black, white is white. That's it. There's no discussion, right? But other things, yeah, you do need to take that kind of nuanced approach as well. So that's why life is hard. It's just too many things to deal with, right? So
different rules apply to different dimensions of it, right?
So can you be flexible in adjusting the right lens as seeing a certain thing? That's the art of it, right? Like, but not a lot of us can do it, because we all have biases. We all have our, whatever influence
again,
us.
it's like a meta practice, right? Meta perspective, meta skill. But that's like still like how to develop that,
But that is
it's like, are you having the right?
Me.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you develop? Because why else would you do it? Okay, if somebody wants to be spiritual, why would they want to be spiritual? What's the thing, right?
Yes.
Well, that person is looking for something. He's looking for, because obviously, see, this is the thing, right? Nobody would be keen to spirituality if they don't have any problem in their life. It's only because when they have some problem in their life isn't how that they feel it's supposed to be. That's when they question, right? That's when they seek out answers. Like, is there more to this? Is there more? Because something is not. Because if everything is correct, if everything is good, why would they even chase after this question then? It just means that something doesn't give. Something is not in their head, right? In our heads is you haven't found the answer and you keep looking. But that's only the basis of it is that there is some kind of problem, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't even realize that there will be a problem. If everything in life, if you go through your life without any spiritual kind of, you will live, quote unquote, without thinking, essentially. You live your life as you're, quote unquote, supposed to live. If you, uh, like, kind of like what most, I would say, like how most people would think life will involve is like, okay, you go to school, you do these things, right? You do these things according to what age. The common consensus is this, and then you just go through life like that. Some people, they don't need greater spiritual awakening. They just go through their life as normal as, but that's because, I don't know, maybe some people's mind, they just don't go there. They think this is fine. Whatever problem there is, it feels like, oh, this is life. They accept the premise that this is what life is, and you can live in that way, right? The belief system does kind of forms your world. If you accept that, that's how you live. But other people will be like, no, this has got to be more to this because this is not enough, right? Or something's wrong with this picture, right? And of course, there's always something wrong with this picture. There are naturally going to be people who question things, right? And I think part of that, not to say that this is how spirituality arises, but I'm just saying that that natural inclination is giving us all these inquiries, right? And then, people, society do develop different things like religion, these different thoughts to kind of, not exactly as a solution, but like the reason why they arise is there is a reason. Logically speaking, religion, for example, solves some of these problems of belief, and there has reason to arise. Because otherwise, people would be like, "Oh, what am I supposed to believe in then? How do I explain all these things happening in the world?" The kind of do have this tendency to want to answer these questions that people have. Like, oh, why is it this? Why is it that? Well, because God says so. And then people are like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I don't have to think about it then. Okay, I'll just live my life according to this, you know? So I just think that all these thoughts, they're cool, but it's like, yeah, cool story, bro. But what does that mean for me, right? I think for every individual.
Yeah, another example that came to mind, I was just listening to an interview online on YouTube between a couple of Russian folks. One of them is like a psychedelic therapist type of person who is in that space. Another person is just a guy who kind of became famous in Russian sphere for pioneering and developing a lot of knowledge around psychedelics, because in Russia that is
Doesn't
taboo.
happen.
Yeah, that is, all the information about it is excised from the internet and stuff. So not a lot of it is available. But that guy is essentially, he reminds me of myself in the terms of, like, he's also a very skeptical person. So he kind of went through the whole experience of like discovering psychedelics, then entering the space and speaking to other people, and a lot of people trying to peddle him a lot of these ideas about like Eastern spirituality. You got to read this, you got to read that. This is how it is. He went through a phase where he like was curious about it, all of it, but all of it eventually his like skepticism made him like question like what is all of this? Why is this any of this true? So he has this very sober, critical thinking type of approach to all of these plenty of experiences that he had, very crazy experiences too. But he retained this sober approach to it where he essentially sees and calls out bullshit from a lot of spiritual gurus and stuff. He kind of made it his thing because he's just, there's no proof to any of this. This is just you guys, this is just fucking stories and, those little games that you're playing. But ultimately, this is just little mind games, little hallucinations that he sees no reason to entertain seriously. And if anything, his whole stance is that don't get lost in there. Don't even go there because it's useless. You're going to spend 20 years of your life in there and nothing's going to happen. You're just going to dedicate a bunch of your time and energies to it, this stuff. Worst case scenario is that you can actually fall victim to some groups of people who will like fall into some cult, and they will take advantage of you, and best case scenario is just going to waste a bunch of time and energy and for no reason. And these days and age, I pretty much I agree with him. I am of the same stance. That is interesting that you definitely can fall into there, because I've been there. Like I almost got absorbed by it a couple times to a degree where, like, I don't know where this is going, right? Maybe that was part of the allure, is that there is some kind of mystery. It's like, ooh, maybe there's something that will happen. But for me, that also became just dangerous, because I actually started messing with biology and psychology. I started to destabilize myself. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Why do I need that, right? I was like, no, this is dangerous. So it made me appreciate what I have, what I am, and I'm like, yeah, what do you need? What else do you want, right? It kind of reinforced the idea to me that what you have and what you are is the gift, is all you need. You don't need to be too greedy, you need to appreciate what is. It
Yeah.
still goes back to that.
It's like you don't need to be anything,
Right.
right? There's nobody that says, oh, I must be this, I must be that, I must be this, whatever. If you think that, oh, I must make this amount of money, whatever, well, you just drank the Kool-Aid. That's what everybody is trying to tell you. That's not really it might sound like a nice goal to go for, but fundamentally it's very flawed, right? Where you're not considering your true potential. You're only considering yourself as how much money you're
Yeah,
gonna make,
there's a lot of
meaning that
these
you are a tool.
borrowed ones.
You are a tool to make that money. That's all you're treating yourself as. You're not even treating yourself as a human being. You're just treating yourself as like, oh, I'm just this machine that gonna do these things to generate that currency. That's it. That's all you're doing, right? But life is more than that. You have to kind of fundamentally ask yourself, okay, what do I want to do? Right? Given the
Yeah.
limitations of life and everything that involves with it, what do I want? Right? Because everybody wants a good life, but what does that mean? It means more than just how much in your bank account. It's really the fundamental meaning of that you kind of give yourself, that there's nothing wrong with learning about spirituality, any of this pursuit. But yeah, fundamentally at the end of the day, you feel like, oh, you figured out, well, they're not telling you anything that you don't already know. Like you just haven't found it in yourself. Like they are saying these things, and some of them are very useful, and some of them are very applicable as well. It is wisdom, but you have to apply that to your own life, right? And you can't accept that, oh, what they say is exactly how it is. Like, because nobody can tell you that. Everybody wants to tell that their version of it is the truth. That's what, in that way, you can see the ego there. Like, oh, my way is the way, right? But so is everybody else. I think at the end of the day, it's really about finding the balance, because you will find the resistance from other people, because you can say a certain thing, you can act a certain way, but other people will tell you if that's crazy or not,
Yeah.
right? They will push back. So the real world is just this kind of push and pull. You're living in this world where you want to do your own thing. Yeah, you want to be, but you also need to accept yourself as part of the whole. Because this is, we were talking about the self and the identity and how, that affects how you see yourself and such. I think that it's basically do not go to the extreme, because there's always like the Buddhist way of the middle way, right? The idea that moderation is the correct mentality, because in one hand, when we talk about the self, you can't really act as if you're the most important person on earth, right?
Right.
That's not going to work. And that's not how it is. But conversely, you can also understand that, well, that sense of self is also what motivates you, what propels you, right?
And you still need to take care of yourself.
Of yourself. Yeah, exactly. So no matter how your
Still your
conception
job.
about reality is, or how everything is, interconnected, this is non-dualism, the idea that we're all one is all aspect of what, okay, fine. But practically, you still need to act as if you are a distinct individual, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how else are you gonna go around and do
Otherwise,
stuff,
what's the plan?
right? So I think it's the balance, right? Because anything that you kind of allow yourself to believe or allow yourself to accept, you're gonna be like, okay, what's the caveat, right? You just be like, I'm not gonna accept this. Like, like if anything you accept 100%, you gotta be like, oh, maybe sometimes it's not true, right? You gotta be like, okay, is this? But the only thing is, there's no absolute in that way where, oh, I absolutely believe in this and therefore this applies to every single
Mm.
case. No, it depends. So to have that mind where you're like, okay, I constantly can adjust my sense of, I think is the key to a good way, a good life. If you want to live a good life, you have to be constantly aware. You have to be sensitive in that way. Like, I see, I can detect whatever the vibe is, you know? It's almost like you gotta go with the flow, but like you have your own ideas as well. Like I said, I keep going back. You gotta curate your life. You gotta be like, hey, I do want a certain thing in my life, but I also need to be able to read the room, you know? Because a lot of times our people are way too stubborn. They do things according to this set way because they don't want to think about all these jagged edges. It's just like, give me this nice and easy interpretation, and that's all they went for.
Right.
But the problem is, you're gonna hit the walls. You're gonna make it hard for yourself. You know, I think it's like, oh, the people who actually can see more with their senses are not only are they more capable, they are more enjoying every nuance of life because they get to detect more. They see more. They hear more. They're aware of more things, you know, but not in a way of like, oh, this is all noise. You know, I think the meditation part of it is like to enjoy the moment that you're going through and be able to essentially enjoy all aspects of life, right? Even with,
Hmm.
even in, even the pain that you experience, like it's almost like you feel everything about life and you're not just being numb to certain things because you don't want that to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like constantly we are tuning things out too much or too little or basically inadequate, right? Something is inadequate. Like we either do too much or do too little. So to achieve that balance somewhere is where you're able to get the nuance of everything, right? And that's I think is an artful way to live life. It's just like enjoy more things, not because they're just pleasurable, but because they give you more context about the richness of life. Like, oh, this is very interesting. Where I'm experiencing all these things, right? Like it's at every moment. Because every time I think a lot of people are so easily locked in their head. They're like constantly, they're like, okay, I need to get to point A from point B. I need to do all this, but they forgot that there's life outside of that. And we just kind of either too focused, way too focused on certain things, or we're just not focused enough, where we're just a pile of sand, right? So all I'm saying is, I think the true spirituality is to develop the awareness to a level where you're able to appreciate everything. And that way it will lead to a better life because you get to make the decisions that is meaningful for you, is important for you, and it's the one that works for you. And then you are able to work with other people as well, right? Be like, but you would have enough sense to be like, I am my own, I do my own thing, I know what I want, but you also are not intruding on other people's rights and whatever, right? You're not just being an asshole, right? You're like, I understand you as well. I see where you're coming from. And you just naturally live your life like that. You're not going to get influenced so easily by other people, but you are aware that, you know, you are an individual in this grander society and you are part of it, you know? So it's that fine line, you know? It's not to say a certain way of thinking is 100% correct. You know, you come into this, be like, we'll see, right? Maybe, maybe not, right? But you know enough about yourself, like you're not just giving your own individual agency up just because, oh, I want to fit in or I want to be part of this or whatever. There's a reason you want to kind of carry yourself to kind of essentially not maximize, but like to, I know that word is very loaded, like actualize. I know it's a loaded word. I hate that word, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
What to say?
Which is like
What else to say? But like it's kind of like,
the name of that guy's channel is actualize.org, right? Like,
so. I mean,
so that's perfect.
but I'm just saying, like you want to kind of, there are goals you want to achieve. There are certain things you want, and you do go get it. That part I don't negate the ego part, right? I think that it is important that you cultivate it so that you are looking and trying to to meet challenges, to get to where you want to be, whatever that is. But another part of you is also not rejecting everything. You're not accepting everything, you're also not rejecting everything. I think to me, that's how what spiritual it truly really means for me. It's a way of action, a way of doing, a way of understanding and being in the world, right? It is a way of being, exactly that, just a way of being, but just like what's the right way, you know? That's not because, like I said, right? There's too many in the equation. You gotta find the right way to propel your life forward and not be too kind of constantly being pulled this way or that, because that's what happened to a lot of us, right? In a daily basis, we're like, this is interesting. Oh, that is interesting. It's dividing your attention and you're listening to all these things. You get propagandized. You start believing in things that you don't really believe and you think you do, right? Because some of these are just like you are explaining to yourself why you should believe in it or why this is a good idea, right?
Yes.
Because it's like self-reinforcing sometimes. Like, okay, I see some points, and then you like, oh, this got to be true then.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then
yeah.
you're just operating in that black and white thing again, where you try to fit in the narrative to be, oh, why this guy is right or why this kind of thinking is right.
Yeah, well, this is where like the reality is weird in that sense because it's true there's certain interaction between your beliefs and the way the world is, but it's largely I think it's happening unconsciously, you know. But so if anything, this exercise was kind of geared more
It's
toward that.
useful. I mean,
Is like choose your beliefs, maybe play with it, see what's going on. It's a conscious attempt of doing it. But yeah, if anything, this discourse I think just makes you think more a bit how you relate to reality and what is involved and your actionable part in it. And it's in the spirit of what we generally discuss because it plugs into the whole discussion about the values, the culture, the behavior you want to espouse, the values you want to espouse. It's that. It's just another conscious way of investigating what is and what you want it to be and trying to bridge the two essentially.
yeah, because I do feel you're right. It's like this bridging part where you're bridging you're bridging the intellectual part with the feeling part, you know? Because there are things intellectually we can explain, but we don't feel, like feels like, oh, that's like too much explaining. It's too much like it's up here, right? I think fundamentally we want that to align what you feel and also what you think and also know the difference. Because like we mentioned with the slight difference between, women have more empathy and men are more judgmental. Well, practically speaking, in some cases, you have to adopt that judgmental way of thinking. But that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you should just extract feelings entirely. You can't just say, oh, you shouldn't have empathy. Of course you should. This is the part I learned where, storytelling, for example, in human history is the one of the really crucial aspect that really keeps people together.
Hmm.
Because of that empathy, you get to empathize the person who goes through all these, even though it's fictional, but it's really based on real life. And that really keeps the social fabric alive. Because this is why we love movies. This is why we love literature. This is why we love all these fictional things. They're fake, but they're talking about something about reality that we agree with, right? We should agree with. And there's always a moral of the story. Story are
Yeah.
not so gray where they don't tell you exactly how you should behave or believe. They do tell you how you're supposed to be. You should be a good man, a good woman, a good person, they tell you these things, right? But we lost the kind of ability to really reflect these in modern days. We're just like, we accept that things are what they are. But these stories are supposed to tell you how you're supposed to be, right? But yeah, that's the kind of lackluster of movies and films and TV these days. It's like we lost that touch. Like there's no more. It's all kind of like get muddled. There's no more moral underpinning anymore. You know. So
Well, there's only so many stories, right? But we've created like millions of them at this point. I guess you run out at some point. Maybe the reality will shift and we'll have more context to
yeah,
make new types of
and I just
stories. Maybe that's coming
it
up.
does go with the time, but I think it's also
Yeah.
kind of what the acceptability, like how much people wanted to accept. I think in the 90s, for example, is much better because people like accept all kinds of ideas. That's where these things are kept alive. more vibrant. But that's the part I'm just saying is the important aspect of why something like storytelling is so important is because that develop our empathy. We can be better people that
Hmm.
way. So that doesn't mean everything is just so much, you got to be judging everything according to a certain, no, it depends on the circumstance. So that all is to say is the bridging of this. Sometimes you can be too much in your head. You'll be thinking nonsense, right? And all a lot of the time your question is here. It's like, is how, why do I feel this thing that I feel, right? And sometimes the intellectual thing is not enough. Like just
Yeah.
trying to come up with a worldview or this is how the world is, like that's not enough to explain it. I think you need to integrate the two, where the spirituality is really just like is integrating why the way you feel a certain way with how you're gonna explain it mentally.
Hmm.
So that means you gotta be more aware to be judgmental of any ideas. You got to be skeptical, right? Like how we started here is always skeptical. From skepticism, that doesn't mean that we're just cynical, right? We're just like we're skeptic first because that's the lens by which you can actually gauge these things. Because you can't just I accept this when I first hear it. Then that you're just completely just go over without thinking why is supposed to be the case, right?
Yeah.
So you start with the judgment, but then you start peeling them away and start seeing, okay, what aspect of that is actually a good point? What's actually not just makes sense, but practically speaking, what does that do? Because I think there has to be a practicality in a way, because you can't always just be mental, like everything being mental and intellectual about spirituality, because that's
Yeah.
just too much explaining. You're not actually integrating people's feeling about things, why they feel it a certain way, why they feel this way about the world. What's the fundamental problem? Why do they feel dissatisfied? Why do people want to be more spiritual, right? Because there's a problem with the modern world. There's the problem with how things are being done. And this is why they're looking for a different thing. But oftentimes I think it's just so hard and it's very easy to get duped because you have all these scams and fakers and whatever in every industry, in every single thing, every single, even in spirituality, something that's supposed to be just enlightenment, enlightenment, but, you know, oftentimes it just get too muddled.
Yeah. Well, it's very, very interesting discussion points today. I like that we're still kind of arriving at the same things that we often talk about. Is just with slightly new angles, slightly new insights on an example of evaluating some of these philosophies, which is, yeah, this is a real earnest attempt at just taking something and seeing of what is the value of it, what is it doing, what is it claiming, what's in it for me, essentially, right? But practically speaking, yeah, for me, it's just these are reminders. So these are helpful reminders
Yeah.
for what to pay attention to,
Because even what he
what
said
to,
to you is like, what's true is true, man. So
yeah,
what is true is true. It shouldn't be, right? Because you should be able to pick it apart and still find it true. That's the truth, right? You can pick apart all these arguments, and if it's still true, it will be true. You can't. There's no way you can explain it in a way that's any different. So yeah, this is again what we have. I mean, I feel like all the time that we go through some of these exercises, like to say what we kind of not arrive at, but like what we kind of started with seems to have been more or less in the right way of how to think about certain these things.
hmm,
Even
yeah,
though that might sound like, oh, you're just repeating the same thing, but really that just
yeah.
means it's true. That means, I mean,
I
to
think
us,
so.
right? To
If
us,
we
it
keep
seems
arriving
like
at it,
if we arrive at it, it means that seems like the fundamental part where you get to ascertain what it means in this context, right? Again, I'm not saying I have it all figured out. I don't freaking know, right? That's just how I feel. Like if you ask me this question, I'm like, I think this is how it is, you know? So I'm not putting up anything. I don't have any theories. I don't have any I'm not saying, oh, believe in this thing that I'm saying. I don't have that. I don't have any isms for anybody. Okay, you got
yeah,
to figure that out yourself. I mean, I haven't figured out everything. Some of the stuff might just be too, even for me, it just might be like intellectually it makes sense. But if you want me to be the the disciple of this way of thinking, I probably fail, because I probably fail as anybody will fail. It's like I'm probably too lazy to carry it out, even though mentally I understand it. Yes, this is what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do, but in real life, I'm too lazy to do it. I mean, it's one thing to discuss these things, right? Because intellectually, yes, this makes sense, but that's the hard part, right? Like, but I think that you need to recognize these things and then try it, right? I mean, I'm not saying I don't have the answer. It's just this feels like the right way, you know?
Feeling based. Yeah, this is a good way to wrap it up. Hopefully this will close out this inquiry for
And
the
then you're gonna bring
for the
another one.
foreseeable future. Yeah, maybe eventually I'll find something else. But like these ideas, I've been hearing them a lot of time. It's been interesting to hear somebody who put them all together like that. Because there was real effort put into doing that. So that's for sure. That's without question. There was a lot of effort to structure it, to present it. So that was still interesting. But yeah, and that was a deeper dive. Also to understand how it all structures, how you can plug it into your own thinking and compare it to actual reality and what you can do with it. It's just a very detailed, deeper dive. And I mean, we could have even gone deeper, but I want to stay economical on this because as you can imagine, the rabbit hole, may never stop. You can
Too
keep
deep.
dwelling on stuff and you can keep expanding these concepts and keep ruminating on them. But you have to stop at some point, right? You have to, and there's certain intuition and gut feeling still involved, right? It's kind of like does this feel right? Is this wrong? Because a lot of this language, again, it's imprecise, it's vague, it's very intuitive, because at the end of the day, it has to point to something real that you have feeling or understanding of, right? Empirical understanding. And some of these ideas, you may just not have that. So, because if you don't have this oneness, whatever it is, like if you don't have a feeling for what it is, if you never experienced anything like that, then it doesn't exist for you. And
Yeah.
there's nothing for you to do about it, right? It's like you can't just sit there and like, oh, this is oneness and that's it.
And there's because variability is way too high in life, because you have people who are born with certain, I just say conditions, medical conditions, what they don't feel certain thing. Like what about people who are clinically psychopathic or sociopathic, whatever? They have that condition. It's like almost like a condition, not to excuse their behavior, but to say that they act a certain way according to some kind of whatever
Yeah,
that
some
is,
kind of
right?
configuration.
So that person's way of looking at life will be very different, right? Because their heuristics are totally different. So that just to say that every single person on earth has a specific way that they perceive things, and it
They
could,
have their own thing.
yeah. So sometimes it's not exactly they don't see what you're see. I mean, okay, because they don't see what you see, right? They don't have the. It's like, yeah, if you ask a colorblind person what that color red is or green is, like if they don't see it,
It's
then
not a thing for
it's
them. Yeah.
not a thing. They don't have the same conception as you would view it. So that's the complexity of the real world. Is that just because you think something makes sense, that doesn't mean that there has to be a prerequisite that everybody experiences it that way. But people don't. There are certain people that don't experience life in the same way that you do. So what does that mean then? Does that mean my view is invalid? No, I experience it. Therefore, so that's the tricky part. Do you just say, "Oh, I am the arbiter of truth, and if don't see it, then it doesn't exist"? No, you can't say that. In the same way, what other people are seeing doesn't mean that 100% they are correct. There got to be there always going to be some caveat in there. And so,
I think I still like that concept that I think I heard you use it, the consensus reality. That one is interesting, right? Maybe there is no objective reality, but there is something like consensus reality, which is a negotiable thing. That's an interesting thing. Maybe we'll keep exploring that further because, that's another theme that we've noticed that there's a lot of negotiation, there's a lot of discussion, even like this, right? Like conversing with this guy, trying to understand his content is a form of it's just exchanging idea and then also negotiating what is true, right? That was that. It was like, no, this is true. No, this is true. This is real. This is real. It's interesting because maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? And somewhere in that shared consensus reality. Because there's definitely seems like there's some kind of dynamic part to this whole thing. It's not as simple as like, and the quantum mechanics kind of supporting this, right? It's not as cut and dry as this is like this always. This is like this always. There's some interesting dynamic variability happening in some pockets of reality.
Well, I guess to close off, I have a little thing I want to mention. I recently heard about this dissecting the story Journey to the West, which is a famous Chinese novel that was written in like 14 something, like really old, but very famous. We all know, like, the story of like, the Monkey King, right? Like it's very rich world. But in the actual book, there was a section of it where basically there was the Monkey King, right? Because he's pretty powerful, but he's on this quest, right, with his master, trying to find this sutra from India. So that's the whole story. Journey to the West is just to get that thing back in China to spread the knowledge of the Enlightenment, right? And in that world building, the mythos, there are many gods and Buddhas and all kind of creatures and demons, whatever. It's a very rich world world building. So, but basically, in one chapter, the group is come to this kind of mountain where it's kind of like inhabited by 3 creatures with demons. They basically eat humans in the world. So that whole place is like a hill with like many human skulls and human skins being hanging on trees. It's basically like hell on earth, essentially. And so what happened was they see this, it's like, oh, this is a problem, so we're gonna have to kill the demons to save everybody, right? That's the right way to be. So that's their message, like, we got to be moral about it. So the Monkey King is trying to fight this creature, but then he was being told, like, oh, you can't fight this guy. Why? Because he is related to the creature who born the Buddha. So you can't do it. He's related to, it's like royalty.
Nepo baby.
Yeah. And he's basically like a mount for the heavenly
he has a job.
So he's like a creature, right? But then he's like, he's like the horses, almost like the
station.
horses. Yeah. So, but they're being released down to the earth to do their thing. But they're, demons. They like to eat humans for that's how it is, right? And so this message got passed up, and he's can complain. It's like, well, you got to do something about these guys. Like, they're just killing humans, right? They're like, there's immoral. This is how you're supposed to do this. So some of the kind of Buddha Shivas is like, I can't do it. You got to talk up the chain, okay? So eventually, he went there. He talked to the main Buddha guy, right? The big boss, right? And the big boss is like, how long were these guys down there? He was asking, like, he didn't forgot, right? Oh, how long were they there? So, it's like they were there for like a few days. It's like, oh wait, so 3 days. That's like thousands of years on Earth. Oh, shit, they've been doing that for a long time, eh?
That's a problem.
That's the problem. But then, what he did is like, okay, so I guess that is a problem we got to solve. But what he did was he bring all the entourage down to that place to talk to these 3 beasts, right? The demons. And essentially what happened, the Monkey King, he thought, oh, this is going to get solved. Okay, he's going to do something about this, bring all the courts down here. But nope. What he did was he was negotiating with his demons. Like, if you go with us, stop messing around this place, this earthly place. Just go with me. I'll promise you, I'll give you human sacrifice and like a tribute. So you don't mess with this stuff here.
With this,
is that okay?
Stuff,
It's like, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll do it. So this whole thing was solved by them coming to negotiation. Was like how it is. And then this is what got solved. So all those humans being eaten for thousands of years, it's a rounding error.
Yeah.
And so in this part, this story is part of where the Monkey King, he's very powerful, but then because he kind of submit himself to the truth by being with a master, right? Who essentially is his boss, do the good to basically to do good. That's his whole endeavor. that he kind of enlightened himself to realize, oh, I might be a monkey, I might be wild, but this is the good thing that I'm doing for the people, for the world, right? He's a macho guy. In the whole story, there was only, I think it was like only 3 times he cried. One time was like his master have mistakenly thought that he was killing innocent creatures, but he was trying to protect protect the boss, to protect him, because they always trying to eat him, because his meat is supposedly is like longevity. Like if you eat this enlightened being, this monk, that you get to, all these monsters are trying to eat his master. That's the whole story. It was just all these calamities of the master being chased by demons trying to eat him, right? But he's killing this demon to protect him. But then, because his master is kind of very innocent, and he's like misunderstanding that he's trying to do this, so mistaking him killing the demon, he thought he killed some innocent guy, and so he punished him. And he cried privately because like he felt wronged, right? I'm trying to do good here, but you still punish me. So the third case, I forgot which way he cried, but the second time he cried was this incident. By himself, over the mountain of dead corpses of this place, he cried his heart out, and nobody saw it because it was like he by himself, like he's not going to do this in front of people. Like, and that to show that. And after he cried, he went back to do the work. So the story, the crux of the story is, this is a little story about enlightenment, where the idea is that, okay, he experienced all this, right? All this terrible, and realizing the truth, how terrible it is, that is always this horrible kind of almost like a mafia, the heavenly mafia, right? They just do all these things, right? That's just how the world works. All the innocent people will just die. That's just way of doing business. The real enlightenment for him is not to despair. I mean, he cried his heart out because it's really terrible that he sees this is not justice. This is not how it's supposed to be. But what his realization is, this is the essence of enlightenment. I'm still gonna do what I'm set out to do.
Yeah, so what you can.
I will do what's just. I'll kill all the demon that still harms people. I will still go on this quest to get the sutras, to get the truth, to get the enlightenment, and to spread out to everybody. That's the mission. So this story is telling you that no matter how terrible things are, you have to have a mission. And it's like, after enlightenment,
you can still be a force for good.
You still need to do what was good for the world, what is right for the world, despite the fact that you realize it's all dirty, it's all fucking.
Yeah, because like without that type of effort, it would be even worse, right?
Yeah, because
there's
2 ways you can do it. He can just completely give up. It's like, fuck all this quest, whatever. The world is evil. I'm gonna do whatever I want. Right? Who cares then? There are people like that, right? Essentially, they just be part of the world, and they say, hey, if these guys can get away with it, I can fucking do this too, right? Or there are other people who just completely gave up. Like, they just like, I don't care anymore. It sucks, but I'm not doing nothing, right? They just gave up. So the true path is really like, I still believe what we're doing, right? It's like, I know it's right, despite the fact that maybe at the end of the day, this is not doing anything. This is not going to affect anything, but I'm still going to do it. It's the same way as the enlightenment of chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. That's the whole embodiment of this. This is why this story is brilliant. This has been written hundreds of years ago. And that was really reflecting. It's really a metaphor. It's like a metaphor. It's really a what do you call that? Of the time. Allegory of what happens to the time that the author lived in. Was basically that. Everything was just dirty. It's all like this kind of politics, bullshit, whatever.
It's always there.
And people always suffer because of that. But he's just saying, sometimes what you believe is right, that's the right way to just continue to do this. Doesn't matter.
Kind of means just do your thing, right?
Just do your thing.
No matter what.
What's right, what you think is right, Because this just reminds me, like, all this talk about spirituality, I think this is the crux of it. It's like, despite, you gotta figure out something where it's like you still ride the path of the righteous man, you know?
Hmm.
Despite the fact that you realize, oh, it's all almost
I
impossible.
like that.
It's almost
Yeah.
impossible because even the gods, the Buddha does this shit, you know?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be the embodiment of enlightenment and everything. And he's still doing this shit. So you think who's right? Who's gonna do right? But if it's not you,
Yeah.
then who will do right? So he carried that mission to himself, right? He can cry about this, because he realized the despair. He's despairing at the fact that this is reality, you know?
Yeah.
But then he turn around and be like, yep, I cried. That's it. Done. I'm going to continue my mission, even if this means nothing. But it means the world to me.
Yeah, it kind of means that even though the ultimate rightness may not be possible or achievable, still the movement toward it is as righteous as anything, can be, and as worthy as anything. It doesn't invalidate it. So it's just, yeah, if anything, you're disillusioned to the fact that maybe an ideal is not achievable, but it's still worth it to move towards it because what else is there, right? It's still the best choice, the better choice out of all the other options. It's like either you join the enemy, or you try to do the right thing. And you should try to do the right thing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to conclude today's session with that because I think
Great story.
it is a great story. This is the reason why people really enjoy the story, and it's part of the bigger. It's why it's so famous, because it has so many aspects of this, where it's almost like you're reading a book about Zen itself, in this story that's about all kinds of like colorful characters and kind of caricatures and what have you. But like it's really deep, actually. Like it's amazing.
Is it written in Chinese originally?
Originally, yeah, it is from 14 something. That was the original timeline it was written. It was,
Then I'll get a Russian translation and read it in Russian to see.
it's pretty deep. So I think even reading it normally, like there seems like very hard to kind of digest, I think. But it's it's very in that way it's kind of part of why it's the four classics, is because there's so much packed in that book that there are different ways to interpret all of the stuff. So there are a lot of people that does that, like actually interpret the story and all the episodes that happens in that story. And yeah, and recently there's a video game. I think they from China, they made it pretty big. Black Myth.
They completed that already?
Yeah, it's released. Black Myth Wukong. I think it was a great, it was great reception. People really enjoyed it because it was closer to the material, the world building and all the So I think they did a good job on that one.
Cool. Should check that out as well.
Yeah, so that's
All
what I
right.
wanted to end with.
Good stuff. Perfect ending. We don't always get those, but this one was perfect. Reality did not interrupt like last time.
I mean, yes, you gotta end it in a good note because today the reality really intruded, man. That's what happens in the real world.
Sometimes it do be like that. All right. Until next time then, stay crispy.
Stay crispy.